Picture yourself as a small water bug moving across the surface of a pond. The depths of the water below, impossibly vast for your tiny size, and yet you have the ability to ignore all that lies under, because your movement is limited to the surface. That tension is all that keeps your reality from falling apart, though it easily could. All it would take would be for a human to put their hand in the water and to make a splash. All of a sudden, the water that you stood on with such stability has revealed its true form, a chaotic and ever-shifting maelstrom that beings far greater than you can alter on a whim. For the water bug, the hand that disturbs the surface of its small reality is so unknowably large and strong that it is worthy of reverence and abject terror, even without any awareness or knowledge of the titanic organism, the human, it is connected to and operated by. While we, as humans ourselves, have the capacity to understand this metaphor, it offers us as little consolation as the fact that the water bug can stand on the pond's surface. We were made to call this unstable reality our home, and to believe that we are solidly present and important within it. But there are undoubtedly beings within reality that exist beyond our wildest comprehension, and some of them possess hands just like ours. A fearful man in a prison suit arrives at a bus stop with little memory of how he got there. All the prisoner knows is that the road he is on is only a few miles from his hometown, a place that he hasn't seen since his unfortunate turn to a life of crime. Vague recollections of being arrested and institutionalized in a correctional facility seem to cloud his mind, but there are some details of the site he was detained at that seem all too fantastical. Though he was understandably quite anxious about the gaps in his consciousness, the prospect of returning home after all this time filled the prisoner with a sense of warm catharsis. He jogged down the road with an almost celebratory glee, reminded of all the times he did so as a youth. The hard cement beneath his feet felt like miles of silk and lace with how nostalgic it was to be back. The prisoner wondered to himself who would be there waiting for him among his old friends and relatives. He knew his parents wouldn't be there, obviously. But when it came to the townies that he went to school with, there were a few that he knew he had to pay a visit to. The road stretched on in an unusual spiral pattern, but despite that, it was surely the same path that led the prisoner into town. He made it to Main Street in the exact amount of time he thought it would take him, and that was even with the bizarre spiral he ran through on the way there. He thought that perhaps he was only imagining the weirdness of the familiar but unnerving road. Perhaps he was imagining all of it. For a few brief moments, the prisoner's surroundings became a confined and nearly lightless chamber. His first thought was that it was a jail cell, his jail cell. But when he saw what else was inside the containment unit, his mind fumbled for explanations. Within the center of the chamber was a truly enormous human hand. It was not attached to any arm or body of any description, but its errant twitching made it obvious to the prisoner that it was still alive. The prisoner screamed and jumped back into the main street of his hometown, which was where he was, and also where he had been this entire time, obviously. Perhaps a cup of coffee over at Smith's Diner would take the edge off my nerves, he thought. The route back to his nostalgic teenage hangout was exactly as he'd remembered it. That had to be a good sign. Although when he stepped inside the old diner, things were not as the prisoner had expected. There was nobody sitting at any of the tables, which were once packed every day of the week back in the day. The only other person in the diner was the barista behind the counter, whose face seemed inexplicably hazed in shadow. The prisoner was somehow sure that the barista must have been one of his old friends, who had managed to stay out of trouble and become a key holder at Smith's back during their teenage years. He had always thought that his friend would have a future there throughout his adult years, which, while something that a young person might dread, the prospect of a stable job felt much more ideal now that the prisoner had experienced the consequences of a criminal career. He called out to his friend, who seemed unusually focused on operating the coffee machine. This wouldn't be unusual if there were actually customers in the diner, but their absence made this behavior especially strange. The prisoner was talking loud enough for his friend to hear him, but there was no response. Perhaps a solitary person might be reluctant to acknowledge somebody wearing an orange prisoner jumpsuit, even if they knew them at one time. The prisoner would not be deterred. and approached his old friend, banging on the coffee machine itself to get his attention. This did manage to get the barista to look his way, but a wave of regret washed over the prisoner when he realized something was very wrong with his friend. The shadows that strangely clung to the barista's face were swirling like black water going down a drain, a sinking void in place of his head. The prisoner thought he was staring into infinity, but deep inside the dark hole that was his friend's face, he could see that same hand from his previous vision, twitching in the darkness. There was something deeply disturbing about this hand, despite, or maybe because of, it seemed unaware of the prisoner's existence. It was likely related to the strange happenings, but there was no way to reason with it. He turned and ran back for the front door of Smith's diner, convinced that whatever he was looking at was no longer his friend, if it ever was. He barreled through the entrance, and to his discomfort, found himself entering into the same room. The interior was identical to how it was just moments ago, but with the one exception of the barista being gone as well. The prisoner was now feeling an uneasy sense of déjà vu. Was this the first time he had entered Smith's diner since he got to town? He couldn't tell, and rather than staying inside and waiting for something more unusual to occur, he left the diner. As soon as he stepped through the door, the memories of seeing his friend, the barista, faded into his subconscious. It couldn't have happened. It was a dream to him. Although at the same time, the prisoner couldn't shake the feeling that he had just been woken up. Given the increasingly disorienting nature of the situation, the prisoner elected to change his approach to exploring this apparently altered version of his hometown. He would go pay a direct visit to the house of one of his teenage acquaintances, hoping to find at least some ordinary people he could talk to. He didn't have a car, so he would have to make the trek on foot. Though being a lifetime criminal meant that the prisoner wasn't above a little Grand Theft Auto, there weren't any cars on the sidewalk to steal. While his hometown was always small in terms of population, it was rarely bustling with activity. The distances between houses because of forestation and agriculture meant that motor vehicles had always been a necessity for the function of the community. To see none of them, and no people either, was not a good omen. The prisoner still remembered the streets well enough, and made his way to his cousin's house while shaking off the feeling of encroaching dread and loneliness. Though he had been mostly a friend of circumstance, the prisoner's cousin was one of his oldest and strongest familial bonds. The two of them had even been local nuisances for the cops together, jaywalking and loitering all over town. As opposed to the prisoner's cousin had grown out of committing crime. However, it was likely that his cousin could still be an understanding presence if he could reach him. Unfortunately, there didn't seem to be anyone home at his cousin's house. The prisoner knocked on the front door and back door and checked every window for activity on the inside. The lights were on, but there were no people visible within, let alone the prisoner's cousin. He realized again that his appearance as a jailbird might have been alarming, and that the home's occupants could be hiding from him. Then again, he hadn't seen the police or any police cruisers anywhere. Surely if he was thought to be dangerous, somebody in town would have reported him. Right now, even the attention of law enforcement, however unwelcome it would be in most circumstances, would feel like a calmingly normal event. This caused the prisoner's thoughts to spiral again, as he became paranoid that nobody had been there to witness him since he had come back to town. What if everyone was gone? Frightened, the prisoner picked a broken chunk of cement off the ground and hurled it through the window of his cousin's house. To his surprise, he was struck from behind by that very same chunk of cement. As he looked down at the solid object that he himself had thrown, he heard a sudden noise that sounded like breaking glass. Looking back at the window which he had thrown the rock at, the prisoner saw that the glass had been shattered in a distinctive spiral pattern. The window itself was intact, showing no other signs of damage, but the strange spiral seemed carved almost intentionally. Beyond the now distorted glass, the prisoner could see that the interior of the house had been replaced all at once with an entirely different, but now all too recognizable chamber. It was a dark place with that very same enormous, disembodied hand. Without even knowing he had done it, the chunk of cement was once again in the prisoner's hand. Absent-mindedly, he hurled the cement again into the window, this time breaking its surface into 1,000 shards. The unsettling reflection was gone, and the inside of the house had returned to normal. Or at least, returned to the expected. There was still no sign of the prisoner's cousin, but he had committed to entering the house now. He stepped through the window, unnerved by the lack of an alarm. As the saying goes, it was quiet. Too quiet. He wandered through the familiar house, through darkened hallways and up and down bizarre liminal sets of stairs. It took him a long time to realize that his cousin's house was much larger than he remembered. This was no wonder, as deeper into his delve within the cavernous interior, the prisoner could see that parts of his childhood home had been incorporated into the building. This did not bode well, as his parents' house was the place in town he least wanted to be. But there was no clear way back outside. After ascending a spiral staircase, the prisoner found himself at the door of his parents' bedroom. Somewhere deep in his subconscious, he knew what was waiting for him inside that room. He did not want to open the door. The shadows seemed to grow taller all around him, and as the prisoner turned away from the door, he came face to face with his cousin. Or rather, it was his face looking at a similar void pit to his barista friend, where his cousin's head should have been. Within the umbral darkness of his cousin's whole face, the hand seemed to point towards the door. The prisoner looked on in horror as his cousin also pointed towards the door with one of his own hands. He wanted to close his eyes, to deny what was in front of him, but the image persisted, and the strange disruptions to his senses only became more pronounced. He was hearing things that should not have been happening, partly because they had already happened long ago. The strained voices of his parents gurgling on their own blood seemed to emanate from behind the door. He could hear bludgeoning sounds that repeated at irregular intervals, drowning out and weakening the voices, but not entirely eliminating them. The prisoner could not close his eyes nor plug his ears. Instead, he was transfixed on the twitching hand. Was it testing him? Did it know everything he knew? If I go in there, they'll die. They'll die because I'm the one who took their lives from them. His thoughts were as loud as the cries of pain, but somehow a message from beyond his perception blared through and reminded him of the truth, where he really was. D34678, get out of there. This is your only lifeline. It was the voice of the warden of his correctional facility. No, they weren't wardens. Researchers. And I'm part of their test. They're testing the hand. As quickly as his fracturing psyche was able to put everything together, the door opened behind him, and out stepped a younger version of himself, carrying a bloody aluminum baseball bat. The prisoner looked this other self in the eye, causing a mutual panic between the two. In fear for his future, the young murderer swung the bat and hit the strange older man in the prison jumper hard in the skull. There can't be witnesses, he thought, making sure that his handiwork was fatal. The prisoner did not survive, and apparently neither did his younger self. When the research team from SCP Foundation Site-22 entered the containment chamber, they found that D34678 had beaten his own body into disrepair with a blunt instrument that had never physically existed. D34678's entire phantasmal return to his hometown and his subsequent accidental death being an incident that happened entirely because of the distorted reality of SCP-5688. The giant hand, measuring 3 meters tall and 1 meter wide, is a Euclid-class object that, while animate, does not appear to possess an active psyche. The only movements that SCP-5688 has been known to display are entirely random nerve spasms, which can neither be predicted nor provoked. The hand was discovered beneath Site-22, entirely buried in the dirt and rock of the Earth's crust. It is currently unknown how long the hand had been lying dormant in the place of its discovery, and the only reason that it was unearthed was a planned expansion to the subterranean containment portion of Site-22. The construction project was completed, and SCP-5688 was placed inside one of the newly built containment units. Experiments into the nature of SCP-5688 have revealed that it has an ambient reality warping effect on its surroundings. Usually, this is limited to the chamber where it has been stored, and for that reason, it is meant to remain there so that containment procedures can be upheld. The variance and severity of reality warping that occurs during interaction with SCP-5688 is still being extensively researched through the use of D-Class personnel. While the hand doesn't inflict any direct violence upon the test subjects, there have been a number of casualties among the D-Class due to the completely unpredictable nature of SCP-5688's effects on reality. D-34678's assignment had merely been to observe SCP-5688 uninterrupted for as long as possible, and the unexplained bludgeoning that resulted in his death was only one of the many ways that the altered reality could have manifested. Curiously, another D-Class, D-7452, had been assigned to puncture the flesh of SCP-5688 with a spear in order to see if the hand would defend itself from attack. The results were ultimately inconclusive, as the spear was unable to make contact with SCP-5688. The wood and metal twisting into a spiral shape, along with several of D-7452's fingers. D-7452 felt no pain during the transmutation of his digits, but nonetheless required corrective surgery to detach his hand from the spear. These results raise one of the most unusual pieces of information regarding SCP-5688's reality warping properties, that being the prevalence of spiral patterns. Whether it is the appearance of spiraling shadows or objects becoming bent and reshaped into a spiral formation, it is oddly common for the hand tamperings to repeat this modification. Though there doesn't appear to be a root cause behind the consistent appearance of these spirals, it does suggest that SCP-5688 is not fully chaotic and random in the way that it influences reality. Perhaps the spiral is somehow linked to the Fibonacci sequence, a recursive mathematical sequence that is associated with the golden ratio, an underlying symmetry that is believed to indicate the universal beauty of visual phenomena. Others might say that spirals are a lot more inherently unnerving, as the idea of endless recursion implies an inescapable and hypnotic eternity. The intentions, if any, behind the hand's affinity for spirals cannot be discerned at this time. Those spirals are far from the only trick up the sleeve of SCP-5688's non-existent arm, as it has the ability to trap those who interact with it in impressionist mind prisons that are imperceptible from the outside. Within these delusional sub-realities, almost anything can happen, or at the same time, not happen. The rules of time and space are suspended, and this can result in a number of alterations that cannot be replicated or conceived of outside of describing the results of the test. In a test involving one D-Class, the subject both died in a gratuitous explosive fashion, and yet also lived through the experiment, albeit trapped in an inaccessible state of suspended sleep. Both results were recorded by the Foundation, and both are effectively true, with the research team present at Site-22 recalling both events with perfect clarity. SCP-5688 has the uncanny ability to allow contradictory outcomes to occur within the same moment and span of time. Measuring and cataloging the numerous effects of SCP-5688's reality distortion are certainly the primary source of research into the Euclid-class object, but there is a secondary purpose to the tests that are being conducted. Dr. Henrik, a veteran researcher of Site-22, has been adamant about acquiring a functional DNA sample from SCP-5688. Though attempts to extract such a sample have proved to be a Herculean task, the importance of this endeavor is paramount to Dr. Henrik. Ever since a brush with SCP-5688's tendency to create pocket realities, Dr. Henrik has been reasonably convinced that the hand is somehow a replication or alternate universe variant of his own hand. This theory does not have much in the way of proof outside of Dr. Henrik's testimony on his own experience with the hand, as well as the experiment log that was updated without the knowledge of any member of the research team. An inference could be made about the location of SCP-5688's discovery, and that its proximity to Site-22 could imply a connection between Dr. Henrik and the hand. This wouldn't be the first time that an SCP was believed to have been brought into existence as a result of a researcher being exposed to warped reality, especially if the theory that connects SCP-106, the Old Man, and Dr. Robert Scranton is to be believed. SCP-5688 might be another SCP that was created as an incidental result of the Foundation's research. Alternatively, SCP-5688 may be the fate that awaits Dr. Henrik after an event that has yet to occur in our reality. The third party responsible, whether it is a conscious force or not, would be the unknown catalyst of SCP-5688's existence. Maybe the event that turned the hapless Dr. Henrik's hand into SCP-5688 will never actually occur in our reality, but did fully and irrevocably occur in its own version of reality. While this might be good news for Dr. Henrik, as he won't need to fear for the safety of his limbs, it also means SCP-5688 exists and will continue to exist, regardless of anything the Foundation can do. The trucker tumbles to the greasy floor of the diner, thrown out of his booth, only to come crashing down before he can regain his footing. He'd be climbing back to his feet, ready to square up to the patron who has just hurled him, but staring up at them has made him freeze on the spot. As he lies on the diner floor, the trucker's eyes lock on to the bizarre horror towering over him. It looks like a huge fleshy mess, more akin to a chewed-up wad of gum than a living being. It's nearly impossible to differentiate what parts of its head are facial features. Is the mouth right there in the center, or is it one of the various other strange and inexplicable orifices? Does it even have a mouth? And where are its eyes? Does it have the standard human too, or does it see by smelling sounds or tasting the air? And are those tusks? They are. The trucker has only stopped off for a hot cup of coffee and a bite to eat. Now he's facing off against a puzzling creature ripped straight out of a David Cronenberg movie. But then again, that's what he gets for stopping off at Freddy's Diner. It all begins a few moments prior. The trucker is at the wheel, exhausted but making good time on a long haul across the interstate. Thanks to life on the road, he's been lucky enough to see much more of the country than most, driving from the West Coast to the East Coast and back again plenty of times. And being so familiar with his routes, the trucker has his very own curated list of the best places to eat while on the road. He double-checks the time and realizes he's got plenty to spare, so decides to make a quick detour and heads towards a little-known roadside restaurant, Freddy's Diner. The trucker still remembers the previous time he took a pit stop in Freddy's place. It never ceases to amaze him that it even exists. After all, there's not another diner like it, from here in California to the truck stops over in New Jersey. And the trucker knows he'd pick Freddy's Diner over any maritime-themed novelty seafood place. He likes going there so much, he's even kept it a secret from his fellow truckers on the road. He'd simply hate for everyone to start piling over there and turning his favorite spot into a rowdy trucker hangout or tourist attraction. Pulling his truck up outside, the trucker locks the vehicle up securely and heads inside. From outside, it's just a calm, quiet-seeming place, a diner like any other in that stereotypical 1950s style. That's part of what the trucker likes so much about Freddy's. It's got that comforting, nostalgic feeling to it, like one of the few remaining vestiges of an era that nearly nobody alive remembers anymore, except from seeing it secondhand in old movies. But despite it looking quiet, practically empty from the outside, stepping through the doors at Freddy's is like setting foot on another planet. The entrance isn't just the way into the restaurant, it's the access point to the trucker's other favorite part about visiting there: the people. At first, it seems normal. There's always a decent number of customers bustling about, talking to each other or ordering from Freddy, the friendly, silver-haired old owner dressed in his typical pinstriped apron over a shirt and bow tie. No matter if he's in the middle of serving a customer, Freddy always turns to greet the newest arrival with a warm smile and his classic motto: "Welcome to Freddy's Diner, the only place where you can eat cuisine that's out of your world." The trucker loves how gradually it creeps up on him. Taking a cursory glance around the diner, nothing seems all that out of the ordinary. But looking closer, he enjoys noticing the other patrons and how eccentric they all seem. When taking a gamble on Freddy's and making his first ever visit on another long drive to California, the trucker finds himself convinced that there must be some kind of science fiction or comic book convention in town. Then, soon after, he starts to get a little worried, thinking that maybe he's been on the road too long and is starting to see hallucinations out of pure exhaustion. But now he's been in enough times to know the folks who pitch up to eat at Freddy's Diner. Well, the best way to put it is that they're from out of town. Wandering past the bar, looking for somewhere to sit down, the trucker notices a trio of figures sitting down and enjoying plates full of freshly grilled burgers and baskets of golden fries hot from the fryer. What does it matter that all three are wearing huge, bulky spacesuits with metal piping snaking down them and vents hissing out warm steam? They're just enjoying their meals, after all. The trucker finds a vacant booth and sits down on the comfortable leather seat, scanning the diner for Freddy so he can order a coffee. Sitting across from him at the opposite booth, his eyes fall across a couple, smiling and giggling to each other as they chat. He's so caught up in their infectious positive vibes that he barely realizes how one of them has had her entire right arm replaced with an intricate cybernetic one, or that the other is entirely blue and has pointed ears. It's just nice seeing how happy they are. That's when a voice that sounds like someone gargling water chimes up, and a sinewy tentacle grabs the trucker by his flannel shirt.
What the hell do you think you're doing?
The patron gurgles.
I got up to use the bathroom for 5 minutes and find some chump in my seat. That's my table, pipsqueak.
Moments later, the trucker is on the floor, looking up at a creature he's never seen before. In fact, he's not even sure if the patron is human. Judging by the chewing gum head and the disproportionate limbs protruding from random points across its blobby body, it's a safe bet that it isn't. The trucker stumbles towards the bar and asks Freddy for a cup of coffee, a strong one, to wake him up in case he's dreaming. Across his visits to the diner, he's been convinced that all the flamboyant and eccentrically dressed customers are all just wearing costumes, either for a local convention or because of an anything-goes dress code. But after seeing the patron, the trucker's starting to think that he might have been very, very wrong about this place. Not to be confused with a certain pizzeria populated with quirky animatronic characters, Freddy's Diner is a restaurant experience like no other. But if you're hoping to experience its comfort food and unique atmosphere for yourself, then you might have a hard time getting past the quarantine zone that now surrounds the diner, thanks to the SCP Foundation. Technically, Freddy's Diner is still very much in business, although you're not likely to see anyone stepping through or out of the front doors anytime soon. Well, not from this dimension, at least. Before it would go on to be known as SCP-4258, the SCP Foundation learns of this seemingly innocuous restaurant 2 months after it first appears. To begin, none of the people that live in the nearby area pay the place much mind. As far as they know, Freddy's Diner is just a harmless 50s-themed diner. Each and every one of them remains totally unaware that their memories have been tampered with, so that as far as they're concerned, SCP-4258 feels like it's always been a local staple, despite only having been around for a few short months. However, some new folks roll into town, and pretty soon the Foundation are getting rather suspicious about Freddy's Diner, thanks to abundant reports of a strange restaurant with weird cosplayers from the newcomers. They send in an undercover agent to investigate, making sure to be as subtle as possible. After all, at this point, there's still every possibility that Freddy's Diner really is just a hotspot for cosplayers and other eccentrically dressed individuals. But if only things were that simple. Inside, the agent is greeted by familiar, nostalgic surroundings. Circular seated bar stools, black and white tiled floors like a chessboard underfoot, a jukebox in one corner blaring out hits from the likes of Chuck Berry and Elvis Presley. Even the menu has all the old classics on there. Thick, frothy milkshakes served in tall glasses, freshly made burgers and fries, the kind of food that fits the atmosphere of the 1950s. The thing that doesn't, of course, is the various, unusual customers that frequently eat at Freddy's Diner. Even without his extensive training in identifying anomalies, it doesn't take the Foundation's agent very long to realize that some of the people enjoying their meals inside SCP-4258 aren't all human. Some are. In fact, most of them do still resemble something close to humanoid. Although upon closer inspection, it would appear that almost everyone in the diner has widely different physiology. Even those that look mostly human on the outside aren't a perfect match, at least by our standards. That's because everyone who visits Freddy's Diner has come from a completely different reality. SCP-4258 isn't your average diner. It's an interdimensional diner. People from all across the multiverse have made their way to this specific restaurant for a bite, and it's definitely popular with those that visit. Freddy's Diner might be the only restaurant that can claim to be multiversally loved, frequented by customers from multiple different dimensions all at once. Some days, you might see little more to indicate this than a few patrons wearing weird clothing, the kind that you've never seen before. A sight like that is easy to write off as a bizarre fashion statement after all. But on other days, when you find yourself enjoying a classically made milkshake at the bar, when a 6.5-foot anthropomorphic slime creature sits down on the stool next to you, then it becomes a bit more apparent that Freddy's Diner is anything but ordinary. And the agent sent to investigate the place by the Foundation quickly gets that very same impression during his first visit. Perhaps in an effort not to get swept up in the wondrous Mos Eisley Cantina energy of SCP-4258, The agent approaches the bar and begins to conduct an impromptu interview in the field. He talks directly with an old gentleman who appears to be running the place, the sole worker and owner of the establishment, the man the diner is named after, Freddy, although he'll later become known as SCP-4258-1. Freddy greets the agent with the same charming, well-mannered demeanor as all his customers, before the agent starts trying to get to the bottom of what exactly the place is.
It's a diner,
Freddy tells him after a quick chuckle.
They don't have these in your dimension, kid.
The agent clarifies that there are indeed similar diners elsewhere in this dimension, although they aren't quite like Freddy's. The owner reassured the agent that he's only kidding, and then delivers the diner's motto, which apparently took him a century to come up with.
Welcome to Freddy's Diner, the only place where you can eat cuisine that's out of your world.
Being well versed in the anomalous and aware of the existence of other universes, it doesn't take the agent very long to figure out that this diner acts as some form of multiversal junction point, a nexus where various different worlds can intersect. But Freddy points out that's not exactly entirely correct, but the agent has at least grasped some of the core principle. More than happy to converse with his new customer, Freddy explains that his diner exists in what is known as Todash space. This, according to him, is the space between dimensions, and the door to SCP-4258 does indeed connect to all sorts of drastically different realities. As the agent takes a look through the diner windows, he notices a change in the scenery. Where there was once the familiar setting of Earth, there is now a wide, sprawling desert that seems to stretch endlessly into the horizon and beyond. Just then, a tall humanoid figure wearing a mask steps into Freddy's diner, wrapped in extravagant robes. Freddy greets the newcomer as Quarelf. He's clearly a regular customer. The agent returns to questioning the old man, curious as to how the diner actually functions, and hoping to gain as much intelligence on the matter as possible for the SCP Foundation. One of the main questions the agent wants answered is, if Freddy's diner exists between dimensions, how can the customers possibly pay for their meals? After all, even on Earth, there are multiple forms of currency with different competing values. Across an infinite number of entire universes, there's hardly going to be one multiversally accepted form of payment. But luckily, Freddy has an answer, even if it is a little abstract. As he explains it, the restaurant is funded, in a sense, by something called empathius.
You know that happy feeling you get when you remember something nice or someone compliments you? The restaurant feeds off that. It's what keeps the place running.
Confused as to what he means, the agent asks for clarity. For a moment, it sounds like Freddy's diner extracts positive emotions from its clientele, like a leech draining blood. But Freddy assures him that it's not quite the same. The diner itself only takes away the excess empathius, the positive emotions, that its customers experience from being there, enjoying their meals and the atmosphere of the interdimensional diner. Freddy likens it to trimming the edges of a hedge. SCP-4258 doesn't rob people of their enjoyment, it just takes a little bit to keep the lights on. The patrons that visit only have to feel happiness, and that's the only payment for their meal that Freddy wants. That brings the agent to a final question. If the restaurant takes a little bit of empathius as payment, then what exactly is Freddy? The owner chuckles and says that he's just an old man looking to make good food. Speaking of which, he offers to take the agent's order. Not wanting to be rude, the agent asks for a hamburger and fries to go. He tries to see if there are any other staff working in the kitchen, but there doesn't look to be anyone at all, save for a pair of transparent hands that place a plate down on the kitchen line. Foundation researchers conduct a few different tests on the food that the agent received from SCP-4258, but their analysis quickly reveals that there's nothing harmful about it at all. It's just a well-made burger. The agent is subsequently sent back to the diner to gather more information about it. This time, he's given instructions from the Foundation to change up his approach and speak with some of the customers instead, to see what they think of Freddy's diner. After all, despite his friendly demeanor, the old man could always be a liar, trying to cover up a more sinister nature to his restaurant, so he can lure in more unsuspecting people from across the multiverse. Although the agent has little reason to suspect anything untoward about SCP-4258, the Foundation is nothing if not thorough. During his second visit, the agent sits down with one of the customers enjoying a meal at Freddy's diner, a humanoid being whose body is composed entirely of different types of stone. Just from a cursory glance, there looks to be a mixture of basalt, granite, and limestone all over the entity, who introduces itself as Rock. The agent starts by remarking that the creature has a very interesting name.
Everyone on Rock's world is named Rock.
Pushing for more information on the creature's universe, the agent decides to ask if Rock's homeworld has a name, to which the reply is
Rock.
As far as the agent can attain from Rock's fairly blunt description, the stone entity originates from a universe that lacks any life forms with flesh and blood bodies, or squishies, as Rock refers to them. It also states, with a similar lack of descriptive detail, that its home universe also lacks anything resembling vegetation. There are no trees or plants, which means that the denizens of this dimension only eat
Rock. Very delicious, yes.
The agent submits a proposal to the Foundation for a third visit to Freddy's Diner, writing in his report that his latest interview has proven to be completely useless. Although it does at least provide one interesting detail about SCP-4258, besides all the facts about rocks. It seems that everyone within Freddy's Diner, regardless of which dimension they originate from, is capable of understanding each other. It's almost like a multiversal translator is in effect within the restaurant itself to make it easier for Freddy and his patrons to communicate. Returning to SCP-4258 for a third time, the agent finds himself striking up a conversation with a rather familiar face. His own. Against the improbable odds of infinite different people across an infinite number of universes in an endless multiverse, the Foundation agent happens to bump into one of his own counterparts from an alternate reality. And for the most part, this alternate agent seems to be from a universe that is practically identical to the first agent's. The two men sit down and begin to have a friendly discussion almost immediately after entering Freddy's Diner. After all, it's likely that nobody else in the establishment is as familiar with each other as the pair of them are. The first agent is quick to remark at how strange this encounter is, even amongst his own years of experience at the SCP Foundation. Working with anomalies on a day-to-day basis is strange enough, but interviewing an alternate version of yourself has to be a jarring experience to say the least. The agent tries to establish any major differences between their two universes, asking his counterpart who he works for in his reality. The alternate agent explains that he also works for the SCP Foundation, or another version of it. So far, no differences. Next, the agent asks a more personal question. Is the alternate agent married? It turns out he is. As a matter of fact, they both are, and their wives are not only alternates of each other, but both versions of the couple have been together for 20 years. Next, the agent asks his interdimensional doppelganger to describe his world in more detail. More than happy to oblige, the alternate agent describes that in his universe, it is currently the 21st century. Most of the socio-economic issues faced in this dimension are the same as this one. Political corruption is rife. There are shortages of essentials like food and water in many countries, along with various other problems. But, the alternate remarks, there are good things there too, like Shark Week. That sounds fairly close to our world, the agent observes. Seems like there aren't any noticeable differences between the two. Guess not. Pretty funny, huh? His alternate reality counterpart replies. It is at this point during the interview that Freddy comes over to give the alternate agent his order. A burger and fries, presented in delicious fashion on a plate. Awesome, thanks Fred, the alternate agent says, before turning to his food. Time to chow down. Then, the alternate agent's jaw proceeds to unhinge, revealing multiple rows of razor-sharp teeth hidden behind the front-facing human set. He lifts up the plate and begins to violently consume the burger and fries he ordered. Having devoured the meal in a matter of minutes, the alternate agent then eats the plate his food was set out on, crunching down chunks of ceramic. Returning to the Foundation, the first agent later requests to be administered with amnestics. His request is denied. The agent hides under the table as three nightmarish, warped legs stomp wetly past him, all belonging to the same creature. A creature that had once been a human being. Each step makes a moist, slapping sound on the tiled floor of the laboratory. The lights went out long ago, back when the facility was first compromised. His eyes have adjusted, though seeing some of those things make him wish they hadn't. He ponders how many of those monsters are wandering the hallways, lurking in dark rooms. But he can't think about that right now. All he can try to do is remember how many shots he fired earlier. Does his Sig Sauer sidearm still have 6 bullets in the magazine, or only 3? In a high-stakes situation like this, those numbers matter. As the monster passes out of his range of vision, still hunting, he sees a drooping, fleshy limb drag along the floor behind it. He counts himself lucky that the scar tissue has already grown over the creature's eyes. It can't seem to smell him either. This might be his chance to escape. With the practiced dexterity of his physical training, he slides out from underneath the table and assesses his environment. There's only one of those things in here. It's stomping across the other side of the room, mercifully cast in shadow. He doesn't want to count the limbs. He just wants to get out of here and complete the mission, collect his prize. But as he turns to creep out, another headache strikes him. It hits with such force that his jaw locks up, and it takes everything in him not to scream. Instead, he squeezes the grip of his Sig Sauer and prays for salvation. He needs to get out of here. He needs to survive. As though the universe is answering his prayer, the headache subsides as quickly as it came on. He breathes a silent sigh of relief and takes a step forward, onto a discarded glass test tube. Crunch. The creature jerks towards him, looking with what might have once been its face. He's been spotted. He knows it. All hell is about to break loose. To most, this mission would have been a nightmare, but if you can believe it, the agent had enthusiastically volunteered. This job will either destroy his life or save it. Flashback a month. It didn't begin in a compromised Foundation containment site. It didn't begin in the briefing room or the helicopter en route. It started in a doctor's office, where a promising young agent of the SCP Foundation receives an awful diagnosis: Stage 4 cancer, an inoperable brain tumor, indicated by headaches, disordered thought, and mild seizures. Even by their most optimistic estimations, he doesn't have north of a year to live. All the monsters and maniacs he's encountered in the field, and it's some faulty genetics that sentences him to death. What a sick joke. And the punchline? He's got a pregnant wife he's about to widow, and an unborn child who's going to grow up fatherless. They throw him a condolences party at Site 19. The site director comforts him with the fact that his hefty Foundation life insurance policy will still apply if he dies of natural causes, so his family will be taken care of. He's as grateful as he can be under the circumstances, but none of it dulls the low ache that stays with him every moment of every day. The inexorable fact: he's going to die, and there's nothing he can do about it. Or is there? A few weeks after his diagnosis, he's once again called into the office by his site director. They've got a special mission, one befitting of someone in his circumstances, a dedicated and loyal dead man walking. They've received intelligence from a Foundation research facility in the Nevada desert where things have gone foobar. A few days earlier, they intercepted a distress signal, something about an anomalous pathogen breaking loose during an experiment, but the person sending the signal didn't live long enough to specify what anomaly they were dealing with. Figures. But there had been no further contact from the site since the first transmission, so they had every reason to believe that the site was essentially lost. The agent asks his superior if it's an extraction mission. The site director solemnly shakes his head, commenting that anyone still left in that site is better off dead by now. No, this mission is of a different nature entirely. The agent needs to get in there, manually activate the site's emergency nuclear warhead, and escape the detonation zone before the site and the 15 square miles around it are reduced to irradiated rubble. This isn't a mission. It's a death wish. He's ready to reject it. His time is already short. He doesn't want to spend the remainder of it dying in a plague-ridden hellhole. But that's when the site director makes his offer. I'm willing to make a special exception here, Agent. Because of your condition and the highly sensitive nature of this assignment, I'm going to give you one-time access to a unique incentive structure. If you're able to complete this mission as directed, I'll give you a dose of SCP-500. That gets the agent's attention. SCP-500, also known as the Panacea, is a small pill bottle containing anomalous medicine capable of curing anything. Literally anything. From rabies to smallpox to the common cold to, well, an inoperable brain tumor. It's a simple decision now. The agent has to say yes. Flash forward to the belly of the RAH-66 Comanche stealth helicopter, where the agent is being given his loadout by the handler en route to the clandestine site. He's given a Sig Sauer P320 Nitron compact handgun with a few magazines worth of ammo, some light body armor, and a Dracarys Gen 12 12-gauge shotgun with Dragon's Breath incendiary rounds. The handler assures him that whatever is in there, it doesn't like fire. Though he should only engage in combat as an emergency measure. If he was exposed to the pathogen that ravaged the base, his superiors would consider him lost and send someone else to do the job. Comforting to know, the agent thinks. It takes them a couple hours to reach the site. It's cordoned off by electric fences, looking to the untrained eye like an abandoned chemical plant. Neither he nor anybody else could even guess at the horrors waiting for him inside. Not long after, he rappels down from the helicopter onto the roof of the facility and finds an appropriate entry point, a ceiling hatch he's able to pry open with a utility knife. There's only darkness below. He is glad that they also gave him a small flashlight as he carefully lowers himself down into the hall. There's no turning back here. Either he'll earn back his life or lose it. The agent is methodical, gripping tight his Dracarys and maintaining situational awareness as he works deeper into the building. He studied the schematics given to him by the site director. He knows the layout about as well as his own childhood home. The manual activation panel for the on-site nuclear warhead was in the basement, so he'd need to work his way down. Things seemed normal enough at first, aside from the pervasive air of tension, the fear that there might be some horror lurking around every corner. He's sweating now, but not just because he's worried. It's baking hot in there, like someone had cranked the thermostat up to maximum. There was no power for the lights, but they were still blasting the heater? As he gets deeper into the building, he notices that the very structure of the facility is changing. The walls of some rooms have a strange, fleshy texture. Vein-like structures slither across the ceilings. Desks, lamps, and computers are covered in red raw pustules. It looks like the very rooms around him are afflicted with a malignant cancer. He imagines that the inside of his brain doesn't look much different. Does whatever pathogen they unleashed in here even affect the building? This must be why they want to blow the whole place sky high. His musing is interrupted by a pained whimper down one of the darkened hallways. He instinctually raises his flashlight and sees a limping human figure advancing down the hall towards him.
Help me, please.
He looks sicker than any man the agent has ever seen. He's dressed in the familiar lab coat of a Foundation researcher, but his face and hands have been struck down by the most revolting rashes the agent has ever seen. His skin looks like a giant, livid scab with pinprick orifices for his eyes and mouth. He's wheezing. The agent imagines the inside of his lungs look even worse.
Please, you've got to get me out of here.
Without warning, the infected man lunges forward, trying to close the distance between himself and the agent. He's fast, but the agent is faster. He raises his Dracarys and unleashes a dragon's breath round into the sick man's chest, igniting him. He drops to the ground, screaming and spasming, but without a moment's hesitation, the agent fires off another round into his head. The infected researcher dies, but that's when the real screaming starts. Alerted by the sound of the shotgun blasts, heavy footsteps erupt all around the facility, fleshy and irregular, visceral. They're all zeroing in on the agent's location, and he needs to move fast if he wants any hope of getting out of here alive and getting his cure. He finds the nearest stairwell, kicks open the door, and starts descending, jumping 3 steps at a time. There's a cacophony of awful sounds from the flights above him, but he can't stop and think about that. There is only the mission. But the inhabitants of the site have other ideas. An awful red shape bursts out of a doorway on the flight below him, freezing the agent in place with sheer horror. It looks like the vague memory of a person fused with the dumpster behind a butcher's shop. So many limbs, arms, legs, tentacles, claws, faces. A fever dream incarnate. Of course, the agent wastes no time in giving it hell. He raises his Dracarys and unleashes several dragon's breath blasts, lighting up the stairwell in brilliant magnesium flashes and causing the monster to scream in horror. But this thing isn't like the researcher. It has the power to fight back. A flaming tendril shoots forward and wraps around the shotgun, dragging the weapon out of the agent's hand before he can react. In the moment of clarity brought on by the shock, he hears that the monsters behind him have caught up. A legion of horribles, things that had once been human in various stages of horrid mutation. Red guts and dripping pus abound. He pulls the Sig Sauer from his holster and opens fire into the crowd, hoping to buy himself some time. There's a fire exit next to him, and he had something far worse than fire hot on his heels. The agent bursts through the door and runs as fast as he possibly can, with the victims of the anomalous pathogen trailing quickly behind him. They don't seem smart, but there's enough of them that their intelligence doesn't matter. He doesn't have the ammo to kill them all, no matter how you slice it. He needs to lose them, then get to the nuke. He finds his way into a lab to wait out the chase. We find ourselves coming full circle, back to the start of our tale. The agent, in his attempt to escape, has stepped on a test tube and alerted one of his mutant pursuers to his presence. And in case you were wondering, he did only have 3 bullets left in the SIG. The monster lets out an ear-piercing shriek that's sure to alert all the others and makes a sudden dash towards the agent. He unloads the remaining few rounds into the monster's center mass and sprints towards the door, pulling on the fire alarm on the way out. In that instant, the alarm starts blaring all across the building, sending another spike of pain through his tumor-infested head. But at least it'll make it harder for the blind among the monsters to detect him by sound. Short-term pain for long-term gain. He busts a nearby glass box with his elbow and yanks out the fire axe within. It's his only line of defense now. Remembering the schematics in his mind, he runs for his life, using the axe to ward off the shrieking, once-human beasts as best he can. Floor by floor, he descends towards the basement, never fully losing the pursuers. He runs through hall after hall, door after door, until he reaches the secure bulkhead for the basement control room and punches in the code. Soon, he's standing before a vast control panel and remembers exactly the sequence he needs to activate the on-site nuclear warhead. The agent puts in the code exactly as he was told, and as he does so, he becomes absently aware of a strange itching sensation on his arm. He turns and sees with horror that one of the creatures had clawed through his suit, leaving a red rash against his skin. He'd been infected. But that didn't matter. If he could activate the nuke and head back, the SCP-500 pill would cure his brain tumor and this mysterious pathogen. All he needed to do was complete his mission. Then he'd... With the push of a button, the lights across the facility switch on and start flashing red. A voice over the intercom crows that the on-site nuclear warhead has been activated and that the entire facility would be entering lockdown in the lead-up to the explosion. Lockdown? And that's when it hits him. He was never meant to come home. He'd been given a false promise and sent on a mission with no hope. He'd just be one more person counted among the sick and the dead when the bomb went off. It was so beautifully cruel, he can't help but laugh to himself. He figures when push comes to shove, there's only ever one cure for a disease like this. Boom. The human body can be a terrifying concept. You don't know if the thing that will one day kill you is already lurking deep within your flesh, whether it's a misfolded protein in your brain that will one day become a deadly prion disease, the clogged blood vessel that might someday make itself known as a heart attack or a brain aneurysm, or perhaps the tiny error in cell division that could manifest as any number of cancers. But compared to SCP-610, codenamed the Flesh That Hates, these are all about as severe as a case of chickenpox. SCP-610 is one of the most virulent and deadly anomalous pathogens the SCP Foundation has ever encountered, capable of causing extreme and dangerous physiological changes to its victims. These effects begin with rashes, itching, lesions, and increased sensitivity of the skin, slowly but surely increasing in severity hour by hour as the disease progresses. Within 3 hours of initial infection, blemishes resembling scar tissue will appear across the chests, backs, and torsos of the victims, expanding to their limbs and extremities over the next hour or so. No victim of SCP-610 has ever survived beyond 5 hours. In high-temperature environments, the infection rate is even faster, with the shortest time to date from infection to full conversion being only a handful of minutes. Once full infection is attained, all vital signs will cease for 3 minutes. At this point, the body's advanced scar tissue will take on a life of its own, with vital signs being reported at 3 to 4 times the rate of non-anomalous humans. But they won't appear human for long after that. The mutations continue to advance, becoming considerably more severe. Fleshy limbs will extend, multiply, and split. Their body may warp. Their head may shift or elongate. In some extreme cases, infectees have become static and started to grow out into their environment, covering the surrounding area in tumorous masses, making it more hospitable for fellow victims of the flesh that hates. Highly risky Foundation observation has shown us that the disease seems perfectly designed to propagate itself. In the early stages, when the original infected human is still alive, it will seek out aid from others, hoping for a reprieve from its condition, increasing infection risk. In later stages, the creatures that were once human will aggressively pursue any uninfected people who enter their sensory range. Skin-to-skin contact is the most common vector of infection, but infection via the respiratory system is even more rapid and dangerous. The anomaly is believed to be connected to one of the more dangerous groups of interest the SCP Foundation are aware of, an ancient fringe religious organization known as the Sarkissists. These loosely affiliated cults worship flesh, disease, and corruption in all its forms, and some of the nastier anomalies related to so-called body horror and disease can be attributed to their rituals. However, given their inclinations, it's highly unlikely that even if a connection could be proven, a Sarkissist would give up any information that might lead to the SCP Foundation synthesizing some kind of treatment or cure for SCP-610, even if the Foundation resorted to torture. In fact, knowing the Sarkissists' unconventional views on pain and suffering, they might even enjoy it. Initial reports of the flesh that hates were not actually produced by the SCP Foundation, but the Russian government. After reports of an unusual number of disappearances in the area around Lake Baikal in southern Siberia. It's a rural area, and multiple alarm bells went off when the farmers were sending in reports of neighboring farms being abandoned, their inhabitants unaccounted for. Local police were dispatched to look into the matter. They never came back. Regional police were sent out to locate the missing local police. They disappeared too. When members of the Federal Security Service were sent in, and they failed to report back, it became clear that something out of the ordinary was going on. The Foundation were quick to cordon off the affected areas where people infected by SCP-610 had converged into pseudo-communities. Remote robots and drones are permitted to enter these areas for observation, but aren't permitted to leave to reduce the risk of the infection spreading. Due to both the highly contagious nature of the virus and the highly aggressive behavior of those infected, this anomaly has been given the Keter class and a severe containment mandate to match. Because of the size of the affected areas, isolation and quarantine have been deemed the most viable containment options. If any infected creatures make their way towards the perimeter of the quarantine zone, the accepted procedure is to pepper them with small arms fire until immobile, before destroying the body with incendiary weapons or long-range explosive munitions. Even getting close to the creatures is considered too great a risk to be acceptable. Anyone infected is to be considered lost. They'll be euthanized and incinerated. Anyone within a 3-meter range of one of the infected needs to be quarantined for several hours to ensure that they haven't become a vector. Scorched Earth policies are the standard operating procedure for SCP-610. You may think that this is cruel on the Foundation's part, but it's a policy you'll agree with when you consider that the alternative is hearing a fleshy tendril slithering against your window tonight. If ever SCP-610 breached containment and reached a densely populated area, it wouldn't be long before human beings ceased to be the dominant force on this planet. As I said earlier, the human body can be a terrifying thing, and anomalies like SCP-610 can exploit this primal terror of the self, this bestial burden we all share, because it reminds us of the most frightening and universal fact about our bodies. They won't always be ours. It's 1 o'clock in the morning on a work night, and the last of the bar hoppers and clubgoers have long since turned in. At the end of the street, the last bar is finally closing down for the night. Or it would, except that the bartender is having trouble getting rid of a customer. Sitting at the bar, an old derelict is demanding yet another drink. The bartender grumbles in annoyance. This derelict is sloppy drunk, and the bartender just wants to go home. "Closing time," growls the bartender. "Just one more," protests the derelict, shaking his empty glass for emphasis. "I've got money." He laughs at his own words, his giggles ending with a loud belch that blows a cloud of aromatic vapor into the bartender's face. That's it. This derelict has been hanging out at this bar causing trouble all night, and the bartender has had enough. "Get out of here," says the bartender as he hustles the wobbling derelict out the door. "You're done." The derelict creaks and totters as he stumbles out into the street. The night's festivities are really hitting him. It isn't so often that he's got the money to burn, but when he does, he likes to spend it here. The prices are right, and the conversation is minimal, which is just the way that he likes it. The derelict turns around, fire in his eyes. He's raring to fight, and he doesn't care that the bartender is quite a bit larger than he is. Right now, all he can see is red. "Don't tell me when I've had enough," he slurs, raising his fists as he prepares to lash out. But the bartender has already slammed the door in his face.
Defeated, the derelict turns his back on the closed bar and starts a slow stumble down the street. "Stupid bartender," mutters the derelict, turning up his collar against the cold bite of the night air. He wishes that he just had one more drink to warm his stomach against the chill. He's so out of it that he doesn't stop to think that the bartender did him a favor by refusing to fight. There is no way that the derelict would have won that battle. Even if he was in his physical prime, even if the bartender wasn't twice his size, the derelict is in no shape to fight. His vision is blurry and his head is swimming. In fact, he can barely remain upright. If he had any sense, he would probably stumble home and sleep this off. But the night is young, and he's not ready to give up yet. He walks down the street, eyeing every storefront in hopes of finding another bar. Unfortunately, every window has a closed sign in it. He swears under his breath. What a run of bad luck. What's a guy supposed to do in this town, he wonders. Just when he's about to give up hope, he spies something glinting in the reflective halo of a street lamp. He stumbles closer to get a better look, and he can hardly believe his eyes. Finally, his luck is changing. Someone has abandoned a half-empty bottle. "Well, hello there, little friend," says the derelict. He struggles to focus, but the world is spinning. In his confusion, he could swear he's seeing things. But no, he can feel the heft of the glass bottle in his hand, and he knows that it is as real as he is. "Who left you behind? Who would leave a perfectly good bottle just sitting out here?" He recognizes this brand. There's only about 3 fingers of liquid left, but that's better than nothing. Some people might balk at drinking out of a random bottle that you found on the street, but the derelict doesn't give it a second thought. He tips the bottle back and slurps it all down. It burns going down, just as it should, he thinks. He sighs in contentment as he feels the harsh liquid warm his stomach. Perfect. That really hit the spot. But what happens next surprises him so much that he can't believe his eyes. There's still liquid in the bottle. He blinks, wondering if maybe his adult brain is playing tricks on him, but he shakes the bottle cautiously and is rewarded with the telltale swish of liquid. That's no illusion. He takes another swig, guzzling it down. Normally, he'd drop the bottle to the ground and stumble on, but something makes him pause. He maintains his grip on the bottleneck and raises it again to take another look. And sure enough, there's still more left in the bottle. The derelict cannot believe his luck. He feels like he must have won the lottery. He's found a never-ending bottle. Already his mind is reeling with possibilities. "That bartender really thinks he's so smart," he mutters to himself as he weaves unsteadily. "But I don't need him anymore. See if I ever go to this stupid bar again. He just lost his best customer. Now that I have you, little bottle, I don't ever need to pay for drinks ever again." "It's the best day of my life," crows the derelict, raising his arms in triumph. He's barely able to stagger back to his home, a seedy apartment on the bad side of town, before he passes out on the floor. The morning sun rouses the slumbering derelict, and he rises with a groan. His whole body aches, and his mouth feels dry and parched. That's par for the course after a night of drinking, but somehow this hangover feels different. He puts that thought out of his mind as his mind returns to the strange, never-empty bottle that he discovered the night before. It's lying on its side on the floor next to him. He reaches for the mysterious bottle, only to find that, in fact, the previous night was not a dream. The bottle still contains just as much as it did the night before. He can't explain it, but the derelict isn't about to question his good fortune. He lifts himself to his feet and walks slowly into the bathroom. He's feeling a hangover like he's never felt before. His head is pounding and his throat is dry. His tongue feels swollen and sluggish inside his mouth, but he knows how to handle it. A little hair of the dog is all you need to help with the hangover. He takes another gulp from his bottle, but this time it brings little relief. And he notices something else strange too. It's his scalp. The skin on his head has started to itch, and he can't stop scratching. He feels like he's got the world's worst dandruff problem. He should probably take a shower, he thinks. He strips down and steps into the tub, turning the hot water on full blast and letting it wash over him. The shower only brings him temporary relief. Afterward, as he dries himself off, the towels feel rough and abrasive against his skin. His skin comes off in big, flaky patches, and his nails leave red trails in their wake. What's that? Is that blood? He examines his fingers to see that his nails have grown into ragged, claw-like talons. With a frightened yelp, he bites them off. It's easy to do. Although they look formidable, his fingernails are weak and brittle, almost as if he's dealing with a sudden calcium deficiency. What could be wrong with him? He remembers all the warnings he heard back in school when they used to march everyone into assembly to listen to lectures from the local police. At the time, he scoffed at the long lists of scary-sounding consequences of a lifetime of drinking, but now, He's not so sure. "It's probably nothing," he says as he examines himself in the bathroom mirror. His skin looks blotchy and infected. It doesn't take long before his hair and nails are out of control. His hair grows down to his shoulders, but comes out in big, ragged clumps if he runs his fingers through it. His claw-like fingernails are constantly breaking and cracking until his fingertips are bloody, and his quick is itchy and infected. If his habits had left him looking worse for wear before, he really looks awful now. For the next week, he barely leaves the apartment. He pulls the curtains and keeps the lights off, afraid that someone might see him. When the landlord bangs on the door, shouting that rent is late and demanding that the derelict hand over the money, he doesn't answer. He waits. The landlord gives up for now. That's good, thinks the derelict. It will give him time to think, time to figure out what to do about his disease. He knows that something is not right. Many of the local bartenders are, by now, probably wondering where he's gone. It's not like the derelict to stay away. He's practically kept the bar industry in this town afloat all by himself. It must be something major indeed to keep him away from his favorite poison. Luckily, he still has the bottomless bottle to comfort him during this trying time. The derelict is certain that he's caught some bad bug, but he thinks that he can wait it out. All he needs to do is make it through the next week, and everything will be fine. Sipping free drinks helps him to pass the time in a pleasant stupor as he waits for his health to return. Unfortunately, things are only going to get worse for him. His hair and fingernails keep growing, to the point that he has trouble lifting the bottle without his twisted nails getting in the way. His dry, flaky skin is changing as well, becoming thick and leathery and hanging off him in great folds like the hide of an elephant or a rhinoceros. His skin continues to grow, until the folds flop over his knees and gradually hang lower and lower until they touch the ground. Moving is harder now that he's carrying so much extra weight. He thought at first he just had a nasty bug, but he's clearly picked up some weird skin condition, and even this derelict, sodded as he might be, suspects exactly where he got it. It's got to be that crazy bottomless bottle. He can't think of another reason. Even so, he can't bring himself to part with this little gift from heaven. Even in his darkest hour, a few sips of liquid courage always helps to calm his nerves. He considers lumbering down to the free clinic in hopes that they might be able to cure him or at least tell him what's wrong with his skin. But he thinks better of this option. What if he's got some weird alien parasite that no one has ever seen before? They might lock him away in some government lab or something. No, he reasons, it's better to wait it out. He'll sleep it off, swear off the sauce for a little while, and maybe it'll pass. In desperation, the derelict drags himself across the floor, hoping to at least find some solace away from human contact. He locks himself into his bedroom while he's still able to manipulate the lock on his door. The extra folds of skin are hanging off of his hands and arms, making it hard to do anything. The extra skin is so heavy that he can't walk much carrying all that extra weight. He lies on the floor of his bedroom, away from everything, and hopes that tomorrow, when he wakes up, this will just be a fading dream. The only thing that brings him solace is the never-ending bottle, which, even now in his advanced state of decay, he keeps close by him. After all, he reasons, the damage is already done. What could possibly be the harm in enjoying a nice drink? A week later, his condition has not passed. The landlord is back, and this time he's not taking no for an answer. The landlord isn't supposed to enter his tenant's apartment without permission, but he doesn't care. He uses his own key to unlock the door and go inside. The condition of the apartment is appalling. The furniture is broken, the floor is covered with unidentifiable filth, and there's a rotten stench in the air. The landlord wants to throw up as the full weight of the musty smell hits him in the face. It's as if someone has been living in here without any ventilation, with all the windows firmly closed and sealed. A sudden noise from the bathroom draws his attention. Of course, thinks the landlord, that old bum is hiding in there. He thinks I won't find him. The landlord steals his resolve and heads towards the bathroom, determined to get the money that he feels is owed to him. But what greets him when he steps through the door isn't the derelict anymore. It isn't even human. The creature in the bathroom is a massive pile of ambulatory skin folds. The skin flaps have grown so large and cumbersome that the derelict within can barely move. They sprout all over his body, covering him so that he looks more like some kind of alien sea cucumber now than any human. The landlord stumbles backwards, screaming in terror at the sight, unable to comprehend what he's looking at. Improbably, the creature reacts to the noise, and a ripple of movement spreads across its surface. It starts to move, despite not having any legs. The landlord is so terrified that he doesn't notice the glass bottle that suddenly drops from between the creature's skin folds as it starts to move toward him. The same bottle, still with 3 fingers of liquid inside. How could something like this happen? What parasite or disease did the derelict contract from the miracle bottle he found? Sadly, this never-ending bottle isn't a boon, but a curse, and the man who found it that night became just another victim of what the SCP Foundation has classified as SCP-420. SCP-420 looks like a perfectly ordinary bottle of a certain popular libation, even to the point that it bears the label of a common brand. The bottle always contains a small amount of a mysterious liquid known as SCP-420-1. If this liquid is poured out, SCP-420 will always replenish itself. When SCP-420-1 is potent, it is physically, chemically, and molecularly indistinguishable from ordinary whiskey, although drinking will have an effect far greater than even the strongest liquor. When SCP-420-1 is poured out of SCP-420, though, it undergoes a strange transformation, eventually losing its potency and changing until it is indistinguishable physically, chemically, or molecularly from urine. Consuming potent SCP-420-1 instigates a bizarre physical transformation called SCP-420-2 in 6 stages. In Stage 1, beginning 12 hours after consumption, the subject will start to have difficulty speaking, resulting in slurred speech that is not consistent with normal alcohol inebriation. Their fingernails, toenails, and hair will start to grow at an accelerated rate, but also become brittle and prone to breakage. Nail breakage to the quick often leads to bleeding and infection. The Foundation has had some success in curing SCP-420-2 if it is caught when still in Stage 1, treating it as if it is an aggressive form of cancer with radiation and chemotherapy, as well as a constant intravenous supply of Formula 420A09T-T174B. Victims thus treated have a 73% recovery rate, but a 21% fatality rate. From Phase 2 onward, this protocol can slow the spread of SCP-420-2, but will not stop it entirely. In Stage 2, beginning 1 to 2 weeks after Stage 1, the subject's skin begins to show similar properties to those exhibited by hair and fingernails in Stage 1, becoming dry, brittle, and prone to cracking. As old skin flakes off, the subject's new skin begins to grow at an accelerated rate, eventually forming thick, leathery folds all over the subject's body. Skin flaps growing inside the mouth interfere with speech and eventually render subjects mute, but do not appear to impede breathing or eating. Indeed, subjects in Stage 2 exhibit a renewed interest in eating, possibly because the subject's body requires additional nutrients and calories to build the increasingly heavy armor of thickened, calloused skin. Stage 2 subjects will eat anything that they can get their hands on, and many die after attempting to eat poisonous or inedible objects. In Stage 3, beginning 3 to 6 weeks after Stage 2, nerves in the skin layer grow uncontrollably, but no longer connect to the victim's central nervous system. Genetic testing of the skin in this stage reveals that its DNA has become so mutated that it can no longer be classified as human. It is, in fact, a separate and very inhuman organism that almost acts as a parasite growing from the human host. The skin may develop tumor-like growths, which appear to be analogous to human muscle and secretory cells. Hair and fingernails sprout randomly from the mass of skin. By Stage 4, beginning 3 to 7 days after Stage 3, the skin has become a mass of thick, leathery folds, completely covering the human host to the point that they disappear completely. The skin begins to exhibit random twitching movements, as though it is indeed a living organism finally coming into its own as a life form and testing out its new body. The human subject within the skin continues to eat, although brain scans reveal that they are no longer in control of their mouth. Instead, the skin entity forces the mouth to move by moving the attached skin. Small holes begin to form in the skin, eventually growing into narrow tunnels or throats that lead back to the now trapped body of the helpless subject. The subject is still consumed with a ravenous hunger and will eat anything that they can get in their mouth. In Stage 5, beginning 1 to 2 days after Stage 4, the skin begins to move in patterns indicating rudimentary intelligence. The skin, although still attached to the original subject, is now completely and distinctly non-human. It is its own organism. It can move of its own accord, dragging the trapped host along for the ride, and it moves and feeds much in the manner of an extremely large amoeba. It feeds by excreting a digestive enzyme onto foodstuffs and then enveloping the nutrients with its skin folds, again like an amoeba surrounding its food. The food is taken into the throats. These tunnels connecting the outside of the skin to the now completely subsumed host are now directly connected to the host's circulatory system and function as additional mouths. They can consume nutrients which are moved down their length by bristly hairs and further broken down by grinding keratinous plates before being taken into the host's body. Most hosts will remain in Stage 5 indefinitely, although there still remains a much more dangerous Stage 6 yet to come. At this time, it's unknown what factor triggers SCP-420-2 to develop into Stage 6. Little information about Stage 6 is available at this time, although it is known that it involves even more accelerated skin and keratin growth, resulting in a sudden increase in size and mass. Perhaps the most terrifying part of the entire transformation is that the host remains alive for the duration of the process, and sometimes even after SCP-420-2 has settled comfortably into its new life at Stage 5. Mercifully, most hosts will have completely succumbed to insanity by this point, although some are shown by brain scans to still be self-aware and quite calm, perhaps fading into a zen-like state as they accept the inevitability of their fate. SCP-420 is contained in a storage locker at an undisclosed site maintained by the Foundation, and it is only to be removed from this locker by SCP staff with Level 3 clearance or higher. It has been given the Safe class because, despite the horrifying nature of its effects, at least it doesn't move anywhere. Samples of SCP-420-1 not in use by testing should be stored in the container marked SCP-420-1 Decon in Locker 1014-420 until they lose potency, at which time they can be disposed of as biohazardous liquid waste. Victims infected with SCP-420-2 are not contagious and should be contained in standard solitary D-Class secure confinement. On reaching Phase 3, subjects should receive double rations. Due to the extreme danger of Phase 6, any subjects who reach Phase 4 should be closely monitored for signs that the condition may be advancing further, in which case they are to be immediately destroyed by incineration. Knowing the fate that befalls victims of SCP-420 should make anyone think twice about drinking out of a random bottle that you just found in the street, though personally, I think that's just common sense. I hope you enjoyed this anomaly, which was recommended by Dr. Bob Squad researcher Lawman23.
You open your eyes, only to find something blocking your vision. Are those teeth? Human teeth? Growing out of your eyes? Oh no. Oh God, no. Taking the subway can be a real hit or miss experience. On one hand, it's cheaper than driving, especially with gas prices these days. It's convenient, eco-friendly, and removes any potential stress about where to park. But it can also be hot, poorly maintained, and worst of all, it's filled with the public. These are the thoughts running through the woman's head as she stands on the subway on the way home from work. She holds onto a nearby pole for balance, struggling to maintain a bubble of personal space as a steady stream of new passengers climb on at each stop. She can feel her chest tightening with anxiety, and she takes a deep breath to loosen the stress. Just a couple more stops to go, and then she can get out of here and retreat to the comfort of her apartment. The train car slows down, and the doors open for the penultimate stop. Great! After this one, she'll be home free. Of course, more people climb on. Everybody has places to go, she reminds herself. It's fine. But as one pale, jumpy-looking man crowds a little bit too close to the pole she's holding, she feels her anxiety levels spike again. Why won't he just respect her personal space? Come on, buddy. It's a crowded train, but there's enough room to take a step back. She's working up the nerve to say something when the train jerks suddenly, starting back up. The sharp motion sends the man rocking forward, and he bumps into her, hard. She feels a sudden sharp pain in her hand and looks down to see a speck of blood. Seriously? She swears at the strange man, unable to help herself. He glances down, and his eyes widen. He apologizes profusely and backs away from her, unmistakable terror in his eyes. A bit of an overreaction, she thinks. She just yelled a bit. It isn't as if she was going to hurt him. But he pushes through the crowd, moving away from her, and she doesn't care to follow. The train slows, and the doors slide open again. Thank goodness, her stop. She shoves her way out of the train car as fast as she can and doesn't slow down until she's unlocking the door to her apartment. Time to tend to the weirdest injury she's ever gotten. She disinfects the wound on her hand and begins to apply a bandage. Now that she's slowed down, she can get a better look at it. She had assumed the guy's keys had poked her or something, but now, examining it more carefully, it looks kind of like a bite? Did he have some kind of animal up his sleeve or something? It all happened so fast she couldn't really tell. Better to be safe than sorry. She'll go get a rabies vaccine tomorrow. With that plan in place and a bandage applied to her hand, she quickly forgets about the hellish subway ride, the nervous man, and the strange bite. The next day, she gets her rabies shot and puts the whole bizarre encounter out of her mind for good. And it stays there, out of sight and out of mind. until about a week later, when her gums begin to ache. It starts with a twinge, a bit of discomfort one morning that wakes her up before her alarm. But as the day goes on, the ache grows more and more difficult to ignore. She finds herself chewing on her pen during meetings, alleviating the itching, painful feeling in her gums with the pressure of it. A few days later, it's all she can think about. She half considers picking up one of those hard plastic rings for teething babies. At that point, she realizes it's time to go to the dentist. They'll know what to do. But when the dentist leans her back in that adjustable chair and peers into her mouth, he is just as clueless as she is, perhaps even more so. She's presenting symptoms of a condition known as hyperdontia, he explains. She is, at the age of 30 years old, growing new teeth. Not wisdom teeth that are coming in, but a whole new row of teeth just behind the ones she already has. He advises her to come back in once the teeth have grown in all the way, and they can discuss next steps then. She calls in sick to work the next day. She lies and tells them it's the flu. How could she explain the truth? But at least there's a solution in sight. The dentist will help her figure out what to do next. And surely this will be the worst of it, right? Unfortunately, she couldn't be more wrong. When she wakes up the next day, she notices some difficulty breathing through her nose, accompanied by a feeling of discomfort in her nostrils. Oh great, is she actually sick now? She goes to blow her nose, but nothing comes out. She rubs at her nostrils and is startled by a sudden sharp pain and the sensation of something solid in there. What the hell is going on? She rushes to the bathroom mirror, tilting her head back to get a better look. When she can make out what is blocking her nostrils, her jaw drops. Teeth. They're smaller than the ones in her mouth and somewhat obscured, but there's no doubt about it. Little rows of teeth have erupted inside of her nose. She calls her dentist and schedules an immediate appointment. She struggles to explain on the phone, but no matter what words she chooses, she knows the doctor won't truly understand until he sees her condition with his own eyes. And when he does see it, he can't stop himself from crying out in shock. This is no ordinary case of hyperdontia. This is something else entirely, something that should be medically impossible. Seeing the appearance of teeth inside of the woman's nose, the dentist decides to perform a thorough examination of the rest of her face and head. Much to his and her horror, he finds small teeth beginning to erupt in her ear canals too. He warns that if they are not removed, they could cause permanent damage to her hearing. There's no doubt about it. For the sake of her well-being, the dentist must perform the strangest extractions of his career. The woman is given an anesthetic, and he gets to work. By the time he is finished, the dentist has pulled 36 teeth of varying sizes and shapes from her mouth, nose, and ears. It was a harrowing affair, but at least it's over. He prescribes pain medication, an antibiotic, and some time off of work, and advises the woman to give him a call if she experiences anything like this again. Neither of them will say it aloud, but they're both privately terrified that she'll have to come back in and do it all over again. For the next few weeks, the woman feels like she's back to normal. She's a bit shaken up by the experience, a bit exhausted, but otherwise it all seems to be resolved. Then the aches start up again, not just in her gums this time, but in her ears, in her nose, and more terrifying of all, in new places too. She can feel them, the germs of new teeth growing under the surface in between her fingers and her toes, even in her eyelids. The feeling was unpleasant and distracting before, but now it is absolute agony. She can barely dial the telephone to contact her dentist, but she manages to call him and drag herself down to the office. At first, he doesn't want to believe it, but then he performs an X-ray. The images that come back turn his stomach, and he nearly vomits onto the floor. He can see them clear as day. Teeth, 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 growing everywhere. The woman feels that unique ache, the building pressure of something struggling to grow, ready to burst through the skin and be born. More teeth in her mouth and teeth in her eyes, her ears, all over her body. Even if he extracts every tooth again, even if he plucks out each new growth, there will be more waiting to replace them. Unsure of what else to recommend, he advises the woman to check herself into the hospital. Whatever her affliction is, it has progressed beyond his capabilities. Weeks later, the woman is lying in her hospital bed, weak, exhausted, barely able to move. Her skin is dotted with teeth, Her doctors tried to perform surgery to remove some of the teeth before they could erupt, but the incisions became tiny mouths filled with even more teeth. Now, they've all but given up. She can barely open her eyes to get a look at the strange figures that enter her hospital room, promising to help get to the bottom of her condition. They're scientists, they say, and they specialize in unusual conditions like hers. This poor, unfortunate woman is considered the first recorded patient to be infected with SCP-2450. SCP-2450 is an infectious disease, the most notable symptom of which is the manifestation of severe hyperdontia in unusual parts of the body. The initial source of the infection has been traced to the location now known as Building 2450, a former men's bathroom in a company service station off of a major motorway in the United Kingdom. It is unknown exactly how the infection is transmitted, but Level 5 HAZ suits have been ineffective at containing and preventing the infection. The disease can affect a wide variety of mammalian species, including but not limited to rodents, dogs, and humans. Approximately 23% of mammals exposed to the initial infection source area will contract SCP-2450. Infection can also be passed through a bite, provided the bite is deep enough to draw blood. Infections from bites occur at a rate of approximately 12%. The initial stage of infection is characterized by the presentation of hyperdontia in various orifices of the body. I am sorry to say that is exactly what it sounds like, the eruption of extra teeth in places where no teeth should be. This generally begins in the mouth, as extra teeth sprout from the gums, the roof of the mouth, and the frenulum beneath the tongue. However, as the disease progresses, any bodily opening can become fair game, including the nostrils, the eye sockets, and other, even less comfortable locations. The size of the teeth varies depending on the size of the opening and tends to be proportional to the space available. Teeth produced as a result of SCP-2450 infection grow at a rate approximately 12 times that of ordinary teeth and can grow from gem to full root completion over the course of a period between 3 weeks and 9 months, depending on size. As the infection progresses, more and more rows of teeth will grow further and further back into the affected orifice. Once all natural bodily orifices have grown at least one full row of teeth, the infection will progress into its next stage. At this stage, parts of the body that form a semi-closed space, such as the spaces between the toes or the armpits, will begin to erupt teeth. If that wasn't horrible enough, any apertures formed on the body via external trauma, such as cuts on the skin, will become growth sites for SCP-2450 teeth. Did you just feel a shiver run down your spine? Me too. My own spine, not your spine, you understand. Back to the matter at hand, which I'm so sorry to tell you does in fact get worse. You see, as the infection progresses and more teeth are growing, the calcium and other minerals required to grow these teeth have to come from somewhere. These minerals will be leached from the body's natural stores, and the process can frequently result in osteoporosis and hypocalcemia. Administering calcium and other mineral supplements to SCP-2450 patients will keep them alive, and they will continue to produce teeth indefinitely if this is the case. You might be wondering if the process of growing all of these teeth is especially painful. Allow me to provide absolutely no reassurance. It is. It has been described as extremely painful and similar to the teething pains experienced by young children as their regular teeth develop and grow in. Much like teething infants, patients will experience a strong desire to address this pain by biting or grinding the affected teeth. However, as the infection progresses, the teeth will begin to erupt in areas that are incapable of biting. In these cases, patients will often grind the teeth against solid objects such as the corners of walls. This activity has been highly discouraged, as it could result in cuts and lacerations that may provide a breeding ground for even more teeth, resulting in a truly vicious cycle. Incidentally, this behavior led to the first recorded instance of SCP-2450 infection via tooth-to-blood contact. SCP-2450 was first discovered by the Foundation during a routine search of medical literature, and on February 19, 2009, the Foundation classified it as an anomalous phenomenon sufficiently distinct from hyperdontia. At that point, standard information suppression policy was applied successfully, and the pattern of outbreaks was then used to trace the source to the aforementioned service station. At that point, a series of quarantines and experimentation revealed that the men's restroom in Wing B was the specific point of origin. As far as the Foundation has been able to determine, there is nothing anomalous about the service station or that particular bathroom, aside from the SCP-2450 infections themselves. The station was first built in 1983 and operated normally for decades. So when and how did everything change? By interviewing cleaning and security staff and reviewing years of security footage, the SCP Foundation was able to tentatively pinpoint the date of origin for SCP-2450 to July 15, 2008. On that day, the following events were captured by security cameras located in the building. First, 3 men in black hooded sweatshirts entered the building, their hoods pulled up to obscure their faces. One of the men carried a large, seemingly empty backpack. Another held an unidentified green implement. The third man had nothing in his hands. Shortly after entering the building, the men stopped outside of the Wing B men's bathroom and spoke amongst themselves. No audio was recorded, and their lips could not be seen, so there is no way of knowing exactly what was said. But whatever it was, the men entered the bathroom a few moments later. Before shutting the door behind them, the last man examined the area, looking to see if they were being followed. Seeing that they were alone, he closed the door, and the 3 of them disappeared. They were inside the bathroom for the next 2.5 hours. Whatever happened in that bathroom is still unknown, as security cameras inside of restrooms are generally frowned upon and tend not to be installed. After those 2.5 hours were up, 2 out of the 3 men exited the bathroom, the man with the backpack and the man who was carrying the green object. The third man was not with them. The backpack now appeared to be full, and a great deal heavier than it was on the way in. The 2 men walked to the main entrance of the building, at which point the one without the backpack stopped and reached into the top pocket of his hooded sweatshirt. He then patted the pockets of his trousers. Whatever he was looking for was not there. He turned to head back into the building, but the other man placed a hand on his arm, stopping him. The 2 argued for a moment before leaving the building and getting into a car. Later analysis of the license plate revealed it to be a stolen vehicle. They drove off toward the south and out of sight. Subsequent attempts to track the men down have so far been unsuccessful. The cleaner on duty that day later reported that one of the bathroom stalls was locked for an unusually long time. When he came back and was able to enter and clean the stall, he spotted a large amount of what appeared to be white gravel on the floor and the lid of the toilet. This is now believed to be dental matter. Speaking of unidentified objects, the green implement from the security tapes was later discovered and identified. It is now referred to as SCP-2450-1 and is stored in Reliquary 87B-6, Locker 12004. SCP-2450-1 is a green plastic toothbrush of unknown make or manufacturer. As you might have guessed, it is no ordinary toothbrush. When a tooth is brushed with SCP-2450-1, the teeth will be worn down to the root at a rapid pace. An entire molar, including the root, can be removed with the brush in 5 minutes. In spite of this, it appears to do no damage to any other surrounding tissue such as the skin or gums. On the back of the handle, the text, "For non-oral use only," is printed. The origins of this toothbrush and the motivations for the men that entered the bathroom stall that day are still unknown. However, given the information that we do have, I feel I can make an educated guess. It is my personal theory that the third man, the one who had never been found, was suffering from an advanced form of the SCP-2450 infection. When the men attempted to treat his condition with the anomalous toothbrush, he had advanced to such a severe state that his body was primarily made up of teeth, and he crumbled apart during the process. His remains were then stuffed into the backpack and taken out of the building. The debris left behind somehow infected the area, leading to the subsequent SCP-2450 infections that have occurred in the area since. I have no way to officially confirm this speculation, of course, but it seems as reasonable of a theory as something can be where anomalous tooth-based diseases and unusually powerful toothbrushes are concerned. Any patients afflicted with SCP-2450 must be kept in Secure War Land 12 and physically restrained in order to contain the infection and prevent any further spread. The initial source of infection is contained at the site of its discovery in Building 2450, which has been disguised as an electrical substation. Building 2450 is kept securely locked and surrounded by a standard substation fence, which has been covered with danger of death warning signs in order to deter any civilians from approaching. The building is kept under constant surveillance, and anyone attempting to enter the premises must be detained and thoroughly questioned. The only method of entering Building 2450 is a double-door system, including an isolation chamber which prevents any small mammals from entering the building. No mammals, with the exception of approved test subjects, may exit the building. One member of Foundation personnel with formal dentistry training must be assigned to monitor all dentistry journals and affiliated news sources for cases that might indicate an outbreak of SCP-2450. If one is detected, swift and decisive action must be taken. There is currently no known cure for SCP-2450. Patients who have been infected with the disease can either be kept alive with mineral supplements and produce teeth indefinitely, or they can slowly lose calcium and vital minerals over time until their body can no longer function. Either way, they will be a prisoner of the teeth until the day that they die, confined to a terrifying, toothy existence. Though those who have already been infected are somewhat doomed, at least until a cure can be found, we can take some comfort in the knowledge that SCP-2450 can be easily avoided. Just stay away from the men's restroom in Building 2450 and try not to let anyone bite you, at least not hard enough to draw blood. Still, the images I saw while looking into SCP-2450 will haunt me for quite some time. In fact, I think I've had my fill of the topic. My gums are beginning to itch, so if you'll excuse me, I think I'll go eat some caramels and forget to floss. Can't let the teeth get too comfortable. The captain and the second mate are too stunned to speak. The deckhand hasn't just gone insane, he's become unrecognizable. Something is burrowing out from his eye socket. Teeth. A cluster of teeth that are growing without stopping, winding out of the space where his eyes should be, like weeds. To their horror, the deckhand reaches into the socket and wrenches out one of the teeth, putting it in his mouth and chewing it. As his head turns, they catch a glimpse of the side of his head, lined with more of the crooked, yellow teeth growing out of his skull. Their roots no doubt burrowing into his brain. It looks more like the barnacles on the bottom of the ship than the side of a human head. The captain knows there's only one thing to do. Their cargo needs to go overboard. She's the one doing this. On October 19th, 1985, the cargo ship, the SS Mavis, would be sailing en route to the United Kingdom. Within a week, the vessel would be found by SCP Foundation agents. It was shipwrecked off the east coast of England with no sign of any of the crew, or, more importantly, their cargo, SCP-4667. This anomaly has somehow managed to evade Foundation capture in the almost 4 decades since, although what they would uncover from the wreckage of the Mavis would uncover more about this elusive entity. The SS Mavis had been on a course from a port in Russia to the United Kingdom, carrying a number of individuals from Irkutsk within the USSR. Research and evidence gathered by the Foundation indicates that one of these individuals was Yosif Yekaterina, a local dentist from the area. The other was a mute woman 26 years of age, referred to only as Evidente in partial records recovered from the Mavis. Her surname remains unknown and is believed to have been lost. While at the time of the shipwreck's discovery, the Foundation assumed that this was a case of 2 Soviet defectors fleeing from the USSR during the Cold War, smuggled aboard the cargo ship, it was quickly determined that these 2 individuals were far from ordinary civilians. Yosif Yekaterina had departed Russia after contacting a colleague of his in Britain, discussing an unusual discovery he had made regarding one of his patients. This patient was Evidente, prompting Yekaterina to bring the girl with him aboard the Mavis to visit his associate in the UK, one Russ Stanford, a man known to the SCP Foundation. At the time, Russ Stanford had garnered some attention from the Foundation given his role as the leader of a smaller-scale group of interest, designated as GOI 0435, the Dentists Collective of Britain. While they were hardly considered as great of a security risk as the likes of the Chaos Insurgency or GRU Division P, the Dentists Collective noted study of anomalies had become more prevalent under Russ Stanford's leadership, prompting the Foundation to keep watch of their activities. They had started simply as a workers' union for dentists, but for some unknown reason, the Dentists Collective of Britain had pivoted under Stanford towards studying anomalous practices of dentistry and genetic dental disorders that were also anomalous in nature. Hence, Russ Stanford's apparent interest in Eva Dente. In addition to being mute, the Soviet woman had been diagnosed with total anodontia, a genetic disorder that causes a complete lack of teeth. But there was something else about her condition that had prompted Yekaterina to contact Stanford. The Foundation has since determined that Eva Dente is SCP-4667. Upon hearing about the anomalous dental condition of Yekaterina's patient, Stanford was eager to examine her for himself. He requested that she be relocated to his office in the UK and corresponded with Yekaterina directly in order to arrange for both him and Eva Dente to be smuggled out of the USSR. They procured the SS Mavis, a British-owned cargo-hauling vessel, to transport the dentist and his anomalous patient by bribing the crew on board. It was also agreed that, in exchange for safe passage to the UK, Yekaterina would offer his services as the ship doctor, should the need arise. With the cargo ship workers agreeing to smuggle the two supposed defectors, the Mavis set sail, with Eva Dente locked in a small room to the side of the vessel's cargo hold. By the time the ship washed up on the shores of the United Kingdom, both Yekaterina and SCP-4667 would have vanished. The rest of the crew weren't so lucky. Aboard the SS Mavis were Captain Boleslav Kondrat, the chief mate Carlton Tilda, the ship's chief engineer Kenelm Hiram, Wilhelm Kale the second mate, and deckhand Sebastian Wendell. During the initial transit from the USSR to the UK, Wendell was keeping an eye on Eva Dente in her room. He and Kale discussed her activity, noting that she seemed to be pacing around inside. Neither had been told why she was being held in the cargo hold room. They had only heard from Yekaterina that she was mute and lacked any teeth. Beyond that, they weren't given a reason from their captain as to why she was aboard. Having been standing watch for a while at this point, Wendell asked Kale to fetch him a chair, only to start coughing lightly as his crewmate departed. He tried striking up conversation with Eva Dente, asking if she needed anything, even offering her some leftovers from the previous night's supper. Suddenly, Wendell found his cough becoming more violent and raised a hand to cover his mouth. He felt something solid hit the center of his palm, caught it reflexively, only to feel sick to his stomach the second he opened his fingers to see it. It was a human tooth, an abnormally elongated human tooth. Looking through the window into the room where Eva Dente was, Wendell thanked her, then casually put the tooth back in his mouth, loudly crunching it before eventually swallowing it. Despite telling the anomalous dental patient that he was good for now, he quickly coughed up another unusually long tooth.
Well, if you insist.
Elsewhere on the ship, over at the bridge, Captain Kondrat had been manning the wheel and steering the Mavis, while absent-mindedly humming to himself. As he consulted one of his maps, he suddenly started to experience a cramp in his hand, assuming it to be a flare-up of his carpal tunnel syndrome. To his shock, though, as he reached to pick up a pencil, a soft crack caused him to jolt his hand backwards. Somehow, the fingernail on his left index finger had cracked and was bulging outwards. At that moment, his chief mate Tilda entered the bridge in time to man the helm while the captain left to speak with their impromptu doctor, Yekaterina, about his unusual injury. Finding Captain Kondrat entering his quarters, Yekaterina turned away from writing in his journal and asked if everything was all right with his patient. Kondrat assured the dentist that the deckhand Wendell was keeping a close eye on her before he presented his damaged fingernail to Yekaterina. Being the closest thing to the ship's doctor on board, Yekaterina retrieved a pair of pliers from his bag and started to remove splinters of Kondrat's fingernail. The captain winced, keeping his hand pressed flat on the nightstand, wondering if it wouldn't be less hassle to just chop the whole finger off. But the more fragments Yekaterina chipped away revealed something underneath the man's fingernail. Another long, human tooth. Yekaterina urged the confused Kondrat to keep still while he started pulling the tooth out of his finger. The captain howled obscenities as pain ran down his hand until the tooth cracked out of his finger, which then started to bleed heavily. Yekaterina calmly placed the tooth on the nightstand and retrieved something to sterilize the wound and bandages to cover it. Gagging, barely able to get words out, Kondrat asked what could possibly cause a growth like that to appear. The dentist's answer was as simple as it was telling. "Girl is losing control." He explained as best as he could that he'd cared for Eva Dente for some time, and she had what he considered to be a gift. Yekaterina was certain that she was in control of this anomalous ability, but it seemed that was no longer the case. As he casually produced a measuring tape from his satchel and measured the tooth, Captain Kondrat pressed him for more information, only to be interrupted by Hiram, the chief engineer. He had come to warn the captain that the Mavis was going too fast and that the engine would give out if they kept on at their current speed. Frustrated, Kondrat chalked it up to Tilda, expecting that the chief mate was slacking. He told Hiram to get Tilda out of his smoke break and back to the ship's wheel. Returning to his conversation with Yekaterina, Captain Kondrat demanded to know more about what Evidente was doing to him. The dentist explained that he wasn't entirely sure, but that his colleague at the Dentists Collective of Britain, Russ Stanford, knew more. All Yekaterina really understood was that Evidente could cause teeth to grow. Beyond that, little else. He didn't even have a name for the anomalous condition. The tooth he'd pulled from Kondrat's finger was 32 millimeters long, 10 millimeters longer than the average incisor, and it was still growing. While Kondrat departed Yekaterina's quarters, over at the helm of the ship, Tilda hadn't stepped away from the wheel at all. He just couldn't move. Following the captain's orders, Hiram headed over to the bridge to get the chief mate to slow the cargo vessel down, only to freeze on the spot the moment he saw Tilda. He backed away, horrified, only to start feeling lightheaded. With a heavy thump, Hiram dropped to the floor, fainted. Tilda wasn't moving. He couldn't move. His body was covered in copious amounts of the same elongated teeth, growing out of his arms, legs, hands, splitting through fingernails, and breaking the skin of his knuckles as more of them came bursting out. The teeth surrounded his entire body and had intertwined with the ship's controls, causing the Mavis's gradual acceleration. While Hiram lay unconscious on the floor, there then came the sound of cracking. A puddle of blood started to form underneath him. Back in the cargo hold, something equally strange was happening to Wendell. He was chewing, but no crunching could be heard. His voice was noticeably slurred as he asked Evidente if she had any more for him. When Cale returned with a chair, Wendell turned to him and asked if he had any teeth to spare. Before the terrified Cale could properly process what he was seeing, Wendell reached into his eye socket with two of his fingers and pulled out another elongated tooth before he put it in his mouth and started chewing. Kondrat entered just in time to see this unfold, the captain and his second mate baffled and horrified by what was going on. Wendell jeered that eating his own teeth was better than Cale's cooking, before insisting he was still watching their anomalous cargo. Captain Kondrat explained as best he could that Evidente was somehow messing with Wendell, and that he wasn't supposed to have teeth growing out of his eyes. Without warning, Wendell collapsed, gripping his gut in agony. The tooth fragments in his stomach were still growing and had elongated so much that they were able to puncture through his abdomen. They didn't stop, small enamel spikes tearing through his shirt, while Cale, on Kondrat's order, grabbed the ship's keys from Wendell. The captain declared he wanted to throw Evidente overboard. Cale brought the keys up to the door, only for another tooth to suddenly grow out of the tip of his index finger. It pierced right through his thumb, causing him to drop the keys in pain. As they clattered to the floor, Evidente reached under the door and grabbed them. But as Kondrat was quick to taunt her, she couldn't unlock the door from inside the room. Within the cargo hold side room, Evidente threw the keys in frustration. She stared at the sealed door, and as she did, screams could be heard from the other side. Kondrat and Cale were themselves becoming masses of elongated teeth, screaming in agony before going silent after a few short seconds. Above her, Evidente noticed the ceiling was convex and stepped into the corner of the room, out from underneath the bulge. The ceiling above her started to crack under the strain of something above, only to break and allow a mass of teeth to fall through the resultant hole. It was, or it had been, Hiram's body, now riddled with more of the elongated teeth growing from his back and shoulders. The roof above the side room collapsed, allowing Evidente to escape. A rising pillar of growing teeth carried her up through the hole in the ceiling, up to the Mavis's bridge. Stepping off the platform she had grown out of Hiram, Evidente was at the ship's helm. Low fuel lights were blinking as the calcified statue of Tilda's body was stuck at the ship's wheel. Calmly and silently, Evidente left the bridge through a side door that took her down onto the main deck of the cargo ship. There, the dentist who'd brought her aboard was readying a lifeboat. Seeing her suddenly approaching, Yekaterina wasn't at all startled. Instead, he spoke to Evidente in Russian, telling her,
"You know I care about you and your craft, unlike these others. I will await your reclamation. I hope my service was satisfactory."
After staring at him for a few moments, Evidente left to return to the bridge, leaving Yekaterina free to leave the Mavis aboard the lifeboat. When the ship would eventually wash up on the coast of the United Kingdom, there was no one still alive on board. Or rather, there wouldn't be by the time the Foundation arrived, but they weren't the one to get to the Mavis first. Having been expecting the cargo ship's arrival, members of GOI 0435, including the leader of the Dentists Collective of Britain, Russ Stanford, were quick to arrive at the site of the shipwreck. It was October 21st, 1985. The arrival of the Dentists Collective was recorded by one of their members carrying a video camera. Stanford claimed that she had spoken to him the night before, that she wanted the group to see something. He instructed the cameraman to keep the film steady, as there'd be others who would want to see. Approaching the Mavis's wreckage, Stanford quickly recognized it as the cargo ship that Yekaterina had bribed. He called out to see if there was anyone else still alive on board. As he did, Evidente emerged on the deck of the Mavis. Stanford, with the majority of the rest of the group, called out to her and claimed that they had studied her craft. They called Evidente's anomalous condition her divine work and said that they had heard her cries in the teeth of their dental patients. "Not all of us forsake your gift. Not all." Evidente smirked in response, interrupting Stanford as a pair of wings began to unfurl from her back. They were made entirely of elongated teeth, although the cameraman filming this happening couldn't get a clear enough shot of what was holding them together. Stanford and the rest of the Dentists Collective of Britain bowed towards Evidente. Their leader then addressed the anomalous winged woman. "Go, make your gift clear, Evidente. Make it clear to the overlookers." At this point, as captured in the recording, Evidente used her teeth wings to lift herself up into the air before flying towards the mainland. Once she exited the frame of the camera lens, the members of the Dentists Collective started slowly walking in the same direction that she flew off in. The cameraman dropped his camera, seemingly not noticing, as he joined the others silently walking into the distance. The camera was still rolling when the Foundation agents arrived on the scene. Multiple objects of significance were recovered from the scene of the SS Mavis wreck, including the bodies of its crew, a photo, and the camera, with some of its recordings still intact. The photograph, presumed to have been dropped by one of the dentists, was a black and white image of one of their group meetings, dated several years earlier, showing the collective's members sitting around a table. Written on the back was the phrase, "Dentists Meeting 1981, we grow stronger every day." Among the figures in the photo, Russ Stanford could be seen standing at the far side of the table. Following the recovery of the SS Mavis's shipwreck, the SCP Foundation has been unable to ascertain the whereabouts of GOI 0435. Researchers have postulated that this was more than a group of practitioners with an interest in anomalous dentistry. From the evidence gathered at the scene, they appear to have been some kind of cult of unknown origin or intentions. According to records obtained by the Foundation, not one of the group's members returned to regular practice following this event, nor have any been reported as deceased. The search for further information regarding the Dentists Collective remains ongoing. SCP-4667 also still remains at large. Despite knowing of her existence, SCP-4667 has never been in Foundation custody. However, details about her anomalous condition have been ascertained from the footage recovered at the wreck of the SS Mavis, as well as the bodies of its crew. Whether possessing their deciduous milk teeth or their full-grown succedaneous adult teeth, anyone in close enough proximity to SCP-4667 will begin to grow elongated teeth throughout their body. The range of this anomalous dental transfiguration is thought to have an area of effect between approximately 70 to 100 meters. A person being affected by SCP-4667 will find their teeth start to slowly elongate vertically, growing downwards into the gum line, and eventually through it. This is also known to affect other mammals, as a colony of European bats were found aboard the Mavis, having also succumbed to the effects of SCP-4667. more new teeth will begin to sporadically grow directly from the subject's skeletal system, starting at the jawbone and then downwards, with more growths beginning lower down. These newly developed teeth will also start to rapidly get longer until they are able to puncture vital organs or break through from underneath the subject's skin. This occurs at a sporadic rate, and some Foundation researchers have speculated, based on security footage recovered from aboard the Mavis, that SCP-4667 is able to at least partially control the rate at which these new teeth grow. However, until she is able to be captured, this remains unconfirmed. What is known for certain is that this anomalous overgrowth of teeth will continue even after an affected person is dead. The typical cause of death for these people is having their internal organs pierced by tooth growth. Most commonly, the roots of the teeth in the person's upper jaw elongate until they stab through the roof of the mouth and continue upwards into the brain. Perhaps strangest of all, however, was what the Foundation discovered had happened to the bodies of the Mavis crew after they had been killed. Cadavers of those affected by SCP-4667 are no longer in close proximity to her. The teeth growths will start collectively bending into large, intricate sculptures. The teeth growths emerging from one of the crew formed a feminine, winged humanoid, thought by some to be a depiction of Evidente herself. The bat colony affected by SCP-4667 grew to depict multiple small humanoid figures, appearing to be malnourished and in states of anguish. Out of one of the other crew members grew a tooth sculpture of the winged figure with its arms extended over multiple humanoids. From one of the other bodies, a depiction of these humanoid figures appearing joyous and holding what looked to be food. The next of these tooth growth sculptures appear to show multiple aggressive human figures, with the winged entity flying away from them. The remaining one, noticeably larger and better constructed than the other statues, showed the same winged feminine humanoid, crying. Foundation experts are still struggling to interpret the meaning of these sculptures or how exactly they are formed from a body affected by SCP-4667. Researchers are hopeful that the eventual recovery of SCP-4667 will yield some answers. She is currently thought to be located somewhere between either the North Sea or the Baltic Sea. Abnormal tooth growth in coastal and ocean fauna is being tracked in order to determine her exact whereabouts. It's a perfect night for a candle-lit dinner. The cannibal sharpens his fillet knife, a hungry glint in his eye. It's been a long week at work, seeing clients, managing accounts, crunching numbers, having to pretend he's like all the others, that mass of bland, boring cattle. But on Friday, he gets to indulge in his ultimate passion. What a lovely day. There's a quiet, pained murmuring coming from the larder. The cannibal ignores it and chops carrots. On a cold evening like this, he could lose himself in a nice hot soup and a bottle of the red stuff. The murmuring in the larder becomes a muffled scream. How rude. It's interrupting his favorite part of the thieving magpie on vinyl. That simply will not do. He cleans the carrot juice from the shimmering blade of the knife and stomps over to the larder in a fierce mood, his teeth gritted. He opens the reinforced door. Strings of garlic hang next to imported Italian sausage. Preserves and pickles line the shelves in jars. So many fine, aged cheeses he can't remember all the names. And of course, Keith, bound and gagged in the corner, his ankles chained to the wall. Not so long ago, Keith was an intern at the cannibal's firm. He'd underperformed. He was always late, he was insubordinate. Still, the cannibal is resourceful and pragmatic. It's why they pay him such a lofty salary. It didn't take him long to think of another use for poor Keith. As Keith tries to beg through the rope tied into his mouth, the cannibal feels a pang of hunger. He always gets the most excited when the cattle are afraid. It gives him a feeling of almost godlike power. They'll cry, they'll beg, but sooner or later, the reality sets in. They're less than human now. They're food. Keith, rapidly losing hope, notices an interesting quirk in the architecture of the room. The floors slant slightly down into the center of the room. There's a drainage grate. The cannibal notices Keith looking at it and smiles, a broad crescent of predatory teeth. I had this room designed specially for my unusual feeding habits, Keith, he says, taking entirely too much pleasure in it. That vent you are taking so much interest in, it's for catching the spillage. I can't abide by mess. The cannibal takes out the fillet knife. clean, cold, and deadly, just like him, and sets to work. No point in delaying the fun now. Later that night, once the cannibal has finished hosing down the larder and cooking, he ladles some delicious meat stew into one of his fine china bowls. He takes a sip. Warm and delicious, like wings of golden light spreading in his chest. Intern Keith is actually some good to him now. Life can be full of surprises like that. The next day, as the cannibal sits in the corner office of his beloved high-rise, sending off emails to his most treasured clients, he feels so wonderfully at peace. He always feels that way after a feeding. It affirms what he holds to be one of the foundational facts of his reality. Human beings are just cattle. He's the predator, and the rest of them are prey. The detectives come prying in the afternoon. He expects that much. They ask him the standard battery of questions, details about his own life and history, his limited interactions with intern Keith, whether he noticed anything strange. The cannibal plays the part of the concerned citizen perfectly. He assures the detectives that, sadly, he doesn't have any information that will be of any use to them, but he hopes that the poor fellow is found safely. While he says that part, he tongues a stringy little fiber of Keith still stuck between his molars. When the detectives leave, he feels the ultimate thrill. He got away with it. The only evidence that could put him away is currently moving through his lower intestine. The transgression emboldens him. He normally only feeds once a month, but what would be the harm of going for a double this time, just to celebrate how well the first one went? He grins to himself. Yes, tonight, it will happen again. Cut to the dark streets in the poorer part of town, where he prowls in his Mercedes-Benz like a metal crocodile. Rain falls like deadly knives. The asphalt is river, his hunting ground. Nobody misses people here, and that's something he's counting on. As he drives and seeks out his next victim, he finds himself reminiscing fondly about his past meals. There was the lonely woman walking home from the gym. He watched her working out through the glass all night, feeling his hunger grow. He's a patient ambush predator. When she left the gym, he got out of his car and pulled a black balaclava over his face, a hammer hidden inside the sleeve of his jacket. She didn't turn around until he was right behind her, and by then, well, it was already too late. She made a passable meatloaf. Of course, there was the roadside mechanic. He was easy enough. All it took was a phone stolen from a previous victim and a long, dark back road. He turned up in the middle of the night to solve what he thought was a car problem, but was, in fact, a problem of desire. He can't hide his surprise when he sees the cannibal step out of the dark with a handgun in his steely grip. He went so placidly into the back of the cannibal's car, as meek and obedient as a baby lamb. He made wonderful steaks later that night. And how could he forget the teenage boy that he lured over to his home by pretending to be a girl his age online? People are so easy to trick when they think they're getting what they want. Back in the present, he's selected his target. He parks on the side of the curb when he sees a homeless woman bundled up in the cold. He can give her a warm place for the night, just not the kind she expects. The cannibal slides out of his car, his form hidden behind a long, expensive raincoat. He slides up to the homeless woman and nudges her with his foot until she wakes up, confused and annoyed. He feels like a thrill tonight, a real hunt. When she asks him what the big idea is, waking her up like that, instead of answering with words, he reaches into his coat and pulls out an axe. Her eyes widen when she sees it. This man, this monster, means her terrible harm. She wills herself up to her feet, surfing a cascade of adrenaline, and starts to run down the street, screaming for help, exactly like he wants her to. That's when the chase begins. As shutters close and lights turn off, the homeless woman tears down the cold and desolate streets. The people in this neighborhood know better than to poke their nose into somebody else's business. They've been trained to close their eyes and just be thankful it's not them. Their apathy is the cannibal's greatest ally in these monstrous hunts. The woman tries banging up against indifferent doors, her cheeks streaked with tears. No response. The cannibal keeps up at a steady jog, honed over countless hours on the treadmill at his favorite premium gym. He can catch her at any time he wants, but it thrills him to prolong the chase. The pursuit is the only time he feels like his true self, the predator inside. But the homeless woman hasn't given up. She refuses to lay down and become prey to the monster with the axe. When she realizes that nobody else will help her, she's left with one option. She needs to protect herself. Cutting through the tape marked "Keep Out," she runs into a barren construction site, the ghost of what was once meant to be a mall, but it fell through. Like everything else out here. With her bare feet stinging against coarse gravel, she runs towards some half-completed stairs at the base level of the construction site and begins scaling them, flight after flight, with some inhuman wind at her back. Not far behind, the cannibal grips the lacquered wood of the axe handle, taking steady strides. The fear, he thinks, will only make her taste better. There's no way in hell that some poor stray like this would ever be able to best him. There's one thing that the cannibal underestimates: his would-be victim's will to survive, and that's a mistake that will cost him dearly. The cannibal's pursuit of the homeless woman leads him onto one of the construction site's many vacant floors, filled with ghostly sheets of translucent plastic and metal support beams. It's like something out of a cheap horror film, the perfect setting for an axe murder. And the cannibal more than intends to fulfill that prophecy. He stalks through the sheets of plastic, dragging his axe along the ground behind him with a menacing scrape. She's got to be around here somewhere. He checks behind some old cement drums. Nothing. He takes the time to peer around each concrete pillar, his nice shoes making a pleasing tap, tap, tap on the ground. "I know you're around here somewhere," he says. "Don't think you're getting one over on me. This is the fun part. I'm just working up an appetite." This is where he makes his fatal error. He's wearing a nice pair of lace-up shoes, and she isn't wearing anything on her feet at all. So while he's gloating and taunting, he can't hear her quietly walking up behind him. He doesn't even realize she's there until something strikes the back of his head with tremendous force, knocking him to the ground, dazed and eyes full of bright white flashes. The axe falls to the ground next to him, just out of his reach. He turns, his hair already dirtied with blood, and sees her standing over him. She's carrying a length of rebar, the top curdled into a club of hard concrete, stained red. She doesn't give him a chance to get out a word. She hits him again and again. His arms, his legs, his ribs, his face. She beats him within an inch of his life and leaves him there in the cold, surrounded by ghostly sheets of billowing plastic. The cannibal lays there, too agonized to move. It isn't long before he sees the flashing red and blue of police lights, the wail of sirens. He knows his cursed lie of a life is over, and he can't even make a run for it. What follows is a blur for the cannibal, but a major piece of news for everyone who knew him. He's arrested and booked. They search his apartment and find what the press take to calling his kill room, specially designed to aid in the butchering and devouring of his victims. They find the evidence in his bedroom safe. Trophies, trinkets he's taken from his former meals. They definitively connect him to 12 different local disappearances, none of which he has convincing alibis for. In other words, the cannibal, who has given this fate to so many others, is cooked. Because of the publicity around the case and the grand sense of public shock, the judge felt pressured to throw the book at the cannibal. He was sentenced to death by lethal injection. Upon hearing the sentence, the cannibal bursts into tears in the courtroom. It becomes a viral Twitter moment. He spends a quarter of the time a typical convict spends on death row. It's a quiet and lonely time. A living hell. At least, he thinks, it'll be over when they've pumped him full of deadly chemicals. The hatred, the humiliation, he won't be able to hear it anymore. It comforts him as they strap him down to the gurney and insert the syringes into his veins. Everything goes dark. And then he wakes up in neither heaven nor hell. He wakes up in a crowded, secure bunk wearing an orange jumpsuit, surrounded by so many others like him. Other haunted, broken men, confused and huddled. Occasionally, armed men would enter the bunk and remove one or two of the orange jumpsuited men. Sometimes they would come back. Most of the time, they wouldn't. The cannibal notices one man coming in and out. Every time he seems a little more shaken. Driven by his curiosity, the cannibal approaches this veteran prisoner and asks him what's out there, who are their captors, what's going to happen to them here. The answer he hears fills him with terrible dread. They're in some kind of laboratory. When they're extracted from the bunk and taken out into the testing areas, they're exposed to cursed objects, monsters, entities beyond comprehension. The veteran tells the cannibal about a giant reptile perpetually submerged in a giant tank of acid, a plague doctor forever working on Frankenstein-esque zombies cobbled out of the corpses of their kind, that terrible rotten man in the dark room who can go through walls and feeds on pain. Eventually, every single one of them will be called out to face judgment, to be the subject of some terrible experiment. Perhaps it's worse than hell, the eventual fate and the seemingly eternal wait for it. When the time comes, the cannibal's number is called. A pair of strangers in black tactical gear and pistols holstered at their hips. He feels cold sweat congregating on his brow. Is this it? Is he going to be fed to monsters or shoved into some nightmarish pocket dimension, used for live target practice or in some twisted experiment by an immortal plague doctor? After hearing his head filled with horror stories by all of his fellow prisoners, he feels fear, true and pure and paralyzing. Is this how all of his victims felt before the knife slashed or the axe came down? The men in the tactical gear walk him down a long, narrow alleyway into another secure room. It reminds him of the police interrogation room he'd seen when he was first arrested. Plain white tiles, a metal table in the middle of the room. He's encouraged to sit, and he does so, feeling his heart pound away in his ribcage. A prisoner inside a prisoner. It feels like he's waiting for an eternity for that door to open and a scientist to walk in. The scientist is carrying a paper bag, a bag that might contain all manner of inconceivable horrors. The cannibal even flinches when the scientist puts it on the table in front of him, expecting that something might leap out and attack without warning. But no, the bag remains deathly still, and the scientist encourages him to open it. With trepidation in his pounding heart, the cannibal opens the bag and reaches inside. Waiting for him within is a hamburger, still warm. He wonders at the catch. Will the burger eat him? Will he explode after taking a bite or turn into stone or some kind of monster? All the horrible possibilities feel infinite. He tries to delay, to stall, but the inevitability of it all sinks in. He needs to take a bite of the terrifying burger. The cannibal sinks his teeth in, taking a cautious bite and waiting for the other shoe to drop. But to his immense surprise, it just seems to be a normal burger. He takes a look at the brown paper bag again. There's a faded logo on it reading, "Quick and Ready Meals." He's confused. The researcher clears their throat and asks a single question. Did what you just eat have the taste and texture of human flesh? The cannibal, wondering if this is some kind of trick question, shakes his head. No, it's just a perfectly normal burger. What's the catch? But he never finds out the catch. Instead, the researcher thanks him for his time, and the guards take him back to his cell to await some other experiment that requires his services. He'll never know the truth of SCP-971, but you will, dear viewer. Right now, in fact. SCP-971 refers to a collection of worn takeout menus from an unknown food delivery service going by the name Quick and Ready Meals. Its supposed parent company denies any knowledge of its existence, and no official business records of the company have been found. To the untrained eye, they don't even appear to be out of the ordinary. The menu lists several standard takeout items: burgers, chicken sandwiches, chicken fingers, fries, and soda. If you call the number on the menu, you'll be greeted by an online directory on the other side of the line, inviting you to put in the numbers corresponding to your order. After this, your credit card will be charged, and within 15 to 20 minutes, a paper bag bearing the Quick and Ready Meals logo will appear on your doorstep. You'll probably enjoy the meal, except for one thing. Even if you ordered chicken, you won't quite be able to place the flavor of the meat you're eating. That's where our cannibal came in, better known to the Foundation as D1282. Naturally, the Foundation's first theory as to the nature of the SCP-971 mystery meat was that it was human flesh. There was no real reason for this, other than the fact that when the Foundation deals with meat-based anomalies, it often ends up being some variation on human flesh. However, when our fine young cannibal took a bite of his SCP-971 burger, he was just as confused by its contents as anybody else. That's because the contents of the meat wasn't in fact human flesh. It was something much, much stranger. All of the meat from SCP-971 has been sourced from animals on the EEC Endangered Animals list, including pandas, cheetahs, red wolves, and other endangered mammals. And strangely enough, these creatures don't seem to necessarily be harmed by the process. After the ordering of the SCP-971 meals with meat content, endangered animals in the surrounding area were weighed and were found to have lower biomass than they previously did. Of course, if enough orders were made, this might eventually create an existential threat for the animals, but so far, there have been no reported animal deaths connected to the anomaly. But other than this, there have been no reported anomalous effects, no mimetic hazards, no compulsive behavior. The food has no meaningful effect on the consumer, and most people who order the food will not know that they've even engaged with an anomaly. Aside from the menus already in storage, the going orders to field agents are to log and destroy any of the menus they might find in the wild. As an incredibly low-risk safe class, the surviving Quick and Ready Meals menus are kept in filing cabinet number 26 in the Site-19 file vault. In order to requisition the menu for testing, you need permission from a member of personnel ranked at level 4 or above, though tests are not permitted more than once a week due to the potentially detrimental environmental impact. If you're anything like me, there's a drawer or cabinet in your home that's spent the last several years accumulating a large number of local takeout menus, many of which you can't quite place a point of origin for. In case you're worried that your next late-night snack session could lead to harm befalling an endangered animal, might I recommend just playing it safe and using DoorDash instead. Hashtag not sponsored. After cleaning up the last of the blood, the priest splashes water on his face, hoping the chill will help steady him, steel his nerves ahead of the ceremony. He's performed dozens, hundreds even, knows the order of service for a Catholic wedding by heart. That was until it had found him. The Faith Eater, he calls it. When it first appears, or rather, its voice does, the priest falls for its trick. He thinks it's the voice of God speaking, reaching down from the heavens to offer up divine wisdom. But the more strange things the voice tells the priest to do, the more he begins to wonder. Then it starts telling him about the weddings, what to do, who to accept, how many it needs, and where to expect the Harbinger. It looks almost satanic the first time, the sights and sounds of what could only be an unholy ritual. But wrestling with it afterwards, the priest believes the lies told by the Faith Eater, that this is all part of the grand plan. The Harbinger is only present at these services to help determine who is worthy and who isn't. For a time, the priest resigns himself to his own lack of understanding. The Lord's ways are not his to know, his methods beyond the comprehension of a mortal. But he still has nightmares about all the blood. Lifting his head and looking at himself in the mirror, the priest clenches a fist, trying to stop the trembling of his fingers. The voice of the Faith Eater is still in his head, telling him that its Harbinger has arrived. A door opens behind him, and the priest sees the figure in the mirror behind him. They always look the same, always appearing as a man of middle age. But beneath the surface, it has no organs, its body made of the same fibrous tissue as an insect, hair and teeth formed from chitin. This is more cicada than man, just like the Faith Eater itself. It's always nerve-wracking, performing the ceremony knowing there's one present who doesn't belong. The priest always expects there to be a perceptive child or someone, anyone, on the bride or groom's side to point out there's a stranger standing among the groomsmen, that the Harbinger will be noticed and the subterfuge will be gone. But it never happens. They're always happy to see Cousin Johnny, as they call it, and laugh at its jokes. They seem to be able to understand the jumble of words that the priest can hear it speaking in. The priest feels his heart racing as he gets through the order of proceedings, drumming at his ribs knowing the time to exchange vows is getting closer and closer. The happy couple recite their beautiful words and give each other their rings, and a swell hits the pit of the priest's stomach. The Harbinger, Cousin Johnny as they know him, steps forward with multiple pairs of pliers in his hands, just like the previous time. He passes them around the other groomsmen he'd been hiding amongst and the bridesmaids, compelling them to start wrenching their teeth out one by one. There are no screams, no signs of pain, just copious amounts of blood pouring from the wounds in their mouth. As the Harbinger gathers up the removed bloody teeth and presents them to the bride and groom, the newlyweds start eating. The crack of their own enamel, jawbones breaking, is sickening, every time causing the priest to avert his eyes and look upwards. Sometimes he prays to the real God, not the Faith Eater, that this nightmare will cease. Other times, he just stares at the church's rafters. This time, he spots something secluded among the old woodwork overhead, the only other witness to the objectionable ceremony below, a nest of cicadas. Of all the areas of public life that the SCP Foundation keeps under surveillance, one might not expect the world of dentistry to be the one that warrants so much observation. Yet, over the years, if the Foundation's mission has come to prove anything, it's that anomalies can and will occur almost anywhere, in the most likely or unlikely of places, including inside human teeth. Some Foundation agents have spent tireless years, even entire careers, embedded as assistants, receptionists, and other members of staff at dental practitioners, on the lookout for SCP incursions. While under deep cover at these establishments, agents are tasked with keeping a close eye on the medical and dental records of patients, and are instructed to report any potentially anomalous conditions to the Foundation. One recent incident took place at a rural dentist's office in New Mexico. The patient, an unassuming average male, had booked an appointment with a local dental surgery, complaining of a mild pain within his jaw, in and around his canines. The dentist, a man named locally as Uncle Ted, given his reputation as a friendly family dentist, performed a routine examination on the patient, expecting that the man had little more than a minor toothache. On first glance, Uncle Ted thought he was looking at an ectopic growth, wherein a tooth grows in an abnormal position, usually stemming from the root. Shifting his tiny mirror around, he wasn't certain. It could have been a gemination, where a developing tooth splits into two teeth. But the patient had said this pain had only started up relatively recently. On top of that, his teeth were all fully developed. Either one of these conditions would have been noticed much sooner. What he saw when he looked in the patient's mouth was something entirely different. In his uncertainty, the dentist probed at the afflicted tooth with one of his implements, and to his horror, saw something was burrowing inside the tooth. Unbeknownst to him, both the patient and his assisting dental nurse had been undercover operatives of the SCP Foundation and had been waiting for exactly this moment. Now able to get visual confirmation of the anomaly, the assistant locked the dentist and patient inside the office and called in the incident. Within a matter of moments, operatives of the Foundation's Mobile Task Force Lambda 12, also known by the codename Pest Control, had arrived on the scene to detain the patient and bringing Uncle Ted the dentist into custody as a witness to be dosed with amnestics. What he had just witnessed was a cicada crawling into the man's tooth. The SCP Foundation has given this designation to a phenomenon that affects members of the superfamily Cicadidae, or more colloquially known as cicadas. What do insects like these have to do with teeth? Well, instances of SCP-5852 are cicadas afflicted with an anomalous growth of human teeth. The development of SCP-5852 has, at present, never been recorded occurring with the teeth of any other species, only human. In addition, researchers at the SCP Foundation have extensively examined each known case of cicadas being afflicted with SCP-5852 growths. As far as anyone is aware, there is nothing linking any of these cases of SCP-5852 infestations. Each recorded specimen afflicted with them have nothing in common, from genetic background to the region the insects inhabit. All SCP Foundation researchers looking into the phenomenon of SCP-5852 seem to concur that these teeth can manifest at random inside any cicadas on the planet. As a result, physical containment of potential specimens is impossible, given the sheer numbers of cicada populations in the wild, all of them considered to be potential specimens. Those known to be afflicted with SCP-5852 instances are referred to under the designation of SCP-5852-1. A cicada becomes one of these when a growth begins, typically occurring when the insect makes direct external contact with an SCP-5852 instance or another infected SCP-5852-1. However, in some cases, researchers have observed a selection of instances wherein infectees suffer an internal onset growth of SCP-5852, seemingly having had no other contact with the anomalous insects. Essentially, they can grow on or in any affected specimen. Once a cicada has been infected, the SCP-5852 growth will begin by manifesting within its body. This can cause anything from mild pain to intense discomfort to the cicada, which only worsens as the growth gets larger. When this occurs, anomalous teeth sprout from it, and these can pierce through an SCP-5852-1 infectee's soft tissues surrounding the developing tooth. As the teeth increase in number, continuing to grow and damage these tissues, it can lead to fatal injuries within the affected cicada, especially if the teeth emerge within and cause damage to the insect's nervous system or cardiovascular system. During experimentation, Foundation research teams have discovered that intervening while these SCP-5852 growths are occurring has proved impossible. One test involved making numerous attempts to counteract the rapid growth of more teeth using targeted injections of acid. Researchers theorize that because human enamel is mostly comprised of a crystallized mineral called hydroxyapatite, that a sufficient application of acid would trigger demineralization, essentially dissolving the teeth growing on SCP-5852-1 instances like salt crystals in water. However, given that acid with a pH lower than 5.5 was required in order to demineralize enamel, this also meant that the infected cicadas were dissolved. Further experimentation with lower measures of acid also resulted in failure. Inevitably, a cicada that has become an instance of SCP-5852-1 will continue to anomalously grow teeth out of its body until they break through the insect's exoskeleton. Once this has happened, it will become entirely overwhelmed by teeth, but will attempt a desperate effort for survival. As is well known among those who live in areas where cicadas emerge en masse after their long period spent dormant, these insects are infamous for shedding their exoskeletons in a process similar to molting, in a process commonly referred to as sloughing. SCP-5852 infected cicadas will attempt the same when overwhelmed by teeth growths. Foundation entomology experts have since gathered up some of these sloughed exoskeletons and have run numerous tests on them. Conducting close analysis, the Foundation has determined that these exoskeletons are comprised entirely of hydroxyapatite. That's the aforementioned naturally occurring calcium mineral found in tooth enamel. When an instance of SCP-5852-1 sheds its calcified exoskeleton, this signals the termination of the insect's life. In every documented case, the process always results in the death of an infected cicada specimen. This occurs when the teeth that have grown on their old exoskeletons pierce and rupture the softer, underdeveloped exoskeleton the cicada grows to try and replace it. These are far more fragile, and damaging it is enough to kill an SCP-5852 infected cicada, if it hasn't already been killed by having its body ruptured by the teeth growths. Foundation research teams have closely examined the conditions of the teeth that grow as the result of an SCP-5852 infection, and have concluded that over 30% are discolored. Just under 30% possess some form of cavity, and there have, at a lower rate, been instances where an SCP-5852 has manifested as malformed teeth. Some of these have been observed as containing teratomas, a rare form of germ cell that can create tumors in fully formed tissues, including within teeth. Smaller percentages of the teeth that develop in SCP-5852-1 instances are either macrodontia or microdontia, teeth that are either larger or smaller than the average size. Meanwhile, as few others have grown as germinated teeth, wherein one of the developing growths splits into two teeth, or ectopic growths that causes them to form in abnormal positions or grow at an angle. Although some Foundation researchers have pointed out that a tooth growing out of a cicada could easily be considered an abnormal place for teeth to develop. Arguably strangest of all, however, is the 1.45% of SCP-5852 teeth that grow out of infected cicadas in the exact same condition as teeth that have undergone some form of dental restoration or cosmetic repair work. How is this able to occur without the aid of a trained dental professional is still unclear, and a question that has baffled Foundation researchers. The widespread nature of SCP-5852 has made it hard, if not entirely impossible, for the Foundation to contain it. The Foundation themselves have not been exempt from directly experiencing outbreaks of SCP-5852. An incident arose on the 21st of July 2012, significant for marking the first recorded instance of SCP-5852, which normally only affects cicadas, affecting humans. On the day in question, senior Foundation researcher at Site-21 and leader of the team handling the experimentation with SCP-5852-1 specimens, Dr. Charles Greaves, would request a medical examination with an on-site physician. He complained that he'd been suffering with a mild toothache that seemed to be affecting his canines, and the severity of it had gotten so bad that it was affecting his ability to focus and function during work at the Foundation. Shortly after, His request for an examination was approved, and he was submitted to the Site 21 medical office for treatment. The Foundation doctor, in an effort to remove Dr. Greaves' toothache, saw fit to entirely remove the affected teeth. This took little more than conducting a routine extraction and pulling the researcher's canines out, but afterwards, to the horror of both Greaves and the man now looking at his removed tooth, there was something living inside it. Several juvenile, developing instances of Magicicada cassinii, referred to colloquially and among entomologists as the 17-year cicada or dwarf periodical cicada, had somehow burrowed their way into Dr. Greaves' teeth. The entirety of Site 21 was placed on an immediate lockdown as the Foundation struggled to ascertain exactly how these cicadas had gotten into someone's teeth. In order to gauge just how widespread the anomalous incident was, every member of staff was requested to submit to a mandatory tooth examination. Over the course of several hours, it was subsequently discovered that every member of Site 21 personnel who had been assigned to researching SCP-5852 had numerous specimens of cicadas burrowing in their teeth. Checking personnel work logs, there appeared to be a breach and one that risked further potential spread of this infection. A Foundation security guard had been given several days of unpaid leave due to similar symptoms to Dr. Greaves, having reported his toothache a few days prior to the senior researcher. Unlike Greaves, however, the guard was not granted an on-site examination and was forced to instead consult a local dentist and wasn't permitted to return to work until his toothache was resolved. Said civilian dentist, one Theodore Uncle Ted Robinson, would subsequently witness a cicada burrowing into the guard's tooth during the procedure. Fortunately, another Foundation operative was also present during the guard's checkup, and this agent, posing as a dental assistant, was able to contact the Foundation for support. Presently, the offending security guard has been made redundant and received severance without pay. Meanwhile, in his absence, Mr. Robinson's small practice was forced to shutter its doors permanently. Amnestic treatment was administered to the now former dentist. However, an adverse reaction led to exacerbated memory loss prior to Mr. Robinson's release from Foundation custody. The Foundation considers its efforts to contain the SCP-5852 related outbreak a marked success thanks to minimal civilian witnesses and no casualties. The live cicada specimens that were extracted from affected personnel were kept and studied closely. Each one would begin to develop SCP-5852 tooth growth soon after. When analyzing these instances of SCP-5852-1, research teams discovered that the teeth being grown by these cicadas were exact, identical matches to their own teeth. The teeth of the previous hosts were now growing out of the infected insects, though how exactly this occurred, or even how the cicadas were able to burrow into staff members' teeth at all, remains unclear. Following this incident, personnel were instructed to never directly handle instances of SCP-5852-1 and make no skin-to-skin contact with any of the cicadas, regardless of whether they were alive or dead. It remains a mystery to SCP Foundation researchers exactly what is responsible for causing SCP-5852 outbreaks among cicada populations. Nothing has been gleaned about the precise origin of the phenomenon, despite extensive experimentation and examination of infected SCP-5852-1 instances. Given that the tooth-growing phenomena can occur at random among cicada populations, and the fact that this makes containing SCP-5852 somewhat troublesome, the Foundation has been forced to come up with alternate procedures in order to keep public awareness of SCP-5852 as minimal as possible. A cover story was devised and disseminated to civilians through the use of local and nationwide media. Stories began cropping up, especially in areas known for having sizable populations of cicadas, of a condition affecting the insects. This was referred to as tumorous growth disease, providing a plausible explanation for the toothy growths affecting the cicada populations. Later, this cover story was further pushed by Foundation-aligned entomological experts, further promoting the notion that cicadas afflicted with tumorous growth disease could spread a form of mange, a skin disease normally caused by mites and seen in dogs, but that can also result in rashes and irritation in humans, as well as the risk of secondary infections. The result of these cover stories to explain the presence of tooth-riddled cicadas to the public has, for the most part, had the intended effect of prompting civilians to avoid cicadas when they are no longer dormant. This has also led to most civilians avoiding making any contact with the corpses or discarded exoskeletons of the insects out of concerns around the fictitious cicada mange. No further incidents of cicadas burrowing into teeth, like the one that occurred at Site 21, have been noted. given their propensity for tracking, containing, and, when necessary, exterminating anomalous organisms such as insects and vermin. Mobile Task Force Lambda 12 have been assigned as the first response team when dealing with SCP-5852 outbreaks. Should any infected cicadas be reported or found in the wild, then Pest Control are sent to secure them and return them to the Entomology Department of Site-21. So far, very few at the Foundation have questioned why SCP-5852 specifically affects insects of the superfamily Cicadidae, and no other entomological group, or why certain other anomalies also seem to revolve around cicadas. One member of personnel, Research Assistant Wolfie Dalebro, did, however, raise this question in a small online forum connected with the Gamers Against Weed, an online collective known to create anomalies for their own amusement. In his post, Wolfie highlighted that there seemed to be some tangential link between SCP-5852 and SCP-2852, a figure known colloquially as Cousin Johnny. SCP-2852 has been known to appear at various Catholic and Anglican religious functions, more specifically at baptisms, weddings, and funerals. An appearance of SCP-2852 often results in ceremonies taking a disturbing and violent turn, which also all seem to be connected to cicadas in some way. Weddings affected by SCP-2852 are referred to by the Foundation as White Level events, and Wolfie Dalebro had discovered that one of these took place in the same location that SCP-5852 was first discovered. Templeton Memorial Church, located in Templeton, West Virginia, had been the site of a White Level event several years prior to the discovery being made. A nest of cicadas infected with the anomalous growths, the first recorded instances of SCP-5852-1, were found nesting in the roof of Templeton Memorial Church by Foundation agents clearing up evidence of the disastrous wedding that had been visited by Cousin Johnny. It is unclear if this insect nest was present during the White Level event, and if SCP-5852 was somehow the result of SCP-2852's presence. Since postulating about a connection between SCP-5852 and SCP-2852, Research Assistant Wolfie Dalebro has since been removed from his position at the Foundation. In 2021, he was discovered to have been engaging with the forum connected with the Gamers Against Weed group and was administered with amnestics following his subsequent termination. It is still unclear if this research assistant was able to learn the connection between SCP-5852 and Imago.
A right hook sends the kid spinning down to the grass outside the middle school. He can't stand the bully, but as he spits a wad of blood-tinged saliva onto the ground, he has to admit through his aching jaw that the bully can throw one hell of a punch. A circle of kids around the two of them chant and laugh as others record it on their phones to post to social media later. The kid's heart pounds with anger and fear. It's all so unspeakably cruel, he thinks, and yet it feels like he's powerless to stop it. The bully stands over him, rubbing the knuckles of his punching hand. He looks larger than life to the kid, a towering figure of malice and strength. He may only be 13, but when you're 11, like the kid, that's a world of difference. The kid tries to reason his way out, but that ship has already sailed. The bully gives him a mean kick in the guts that squeezes the breath out of his lungs.
If I wanted to hear you talk, I'd work you like a puppet, dweeb,
the bully says with a malicious laugh. All the rest of the crowd laughs along with him. Maybe he should run, or maybe he could just let the beating happen. It would be easier that way, and the pain would fade by tomorrow. But something inside him, something stubborn, whispers that he can't just keep running. The kid can't take this any longer. He needs to fight back. Summoning up all of his strength, he leaps up and unleashes a punch into the bully's face, staggering him a little. But the kid's not an athlete. He's a mathlete. Once the initial shock of the punch wears off, the kid is mortified to see just how little damage he's done.
That's it, the bully snarls. Now I'm really gonna destroy you.
The kid closes his eyes and braces for a punch, but nothing happens. He barely opens one eye to peek and sees a teacher emerging from the front doors of the middle school and walking towards them. He's been saved. But as the teacher approaches, the kid watches in disbelief as the bully's whole demeanor changes in an instant. His scowl softens, his posture relaxes, and suddenly the same face that sneered at him just moments ago shifts into a wide-eyed look of concern, like he's ready to lend a helping hand. The kid can barely process it. The bully's become the perfect picture of innocence, even going so far as to reach a hand down towards him, He wasn't beating the kid up. He was just helping him up after he tripped. He's so clumsy after all. And the worst part is, the teacher buys it. The kid's pulse pounds in his ears as he glances at the teacher, then back to the bully, who's now wearing a practiced, saintly expression. The crowd around them shifts too, putting on shocked, sympathetic faces, like they're all part of the same act. It's surreal, like a play where he's the only one who didn't get a script. The kid opens his mouth to protest, to shout the truth, but the words die in his throat. He knows they'd only look at him like he was the liar here. The injustice stings more than the pain in his bruised ribs. The kid can only run away from it all, tears stinging his eyes. He knows that if he sticks around until the teacher leaves, there will only be another savage beatdown waiting for him. He runs away from the school, past the bus, and all the way into town, just wanting to get away from it all. He wishes he could give the bully a taste of his own medicine, but that's impossible. He's just too good at playing goody-goody when the adults are looking. It seems like the kid is destined to be on the bottom of the social pecking order, forever. Resigned to what he's sure will be a long life of misery, he slips into a narrow, shadowy alley between two stores, pulling his knees to his chest. No one can see him here. No one can hurt him. He squeezes his eyes shut, trying to block out the sting of his frustration and helplessness. But deep down, he knows it's useless. If only there was a way to make them all understand, to turn the tables, even just once. That's when he hears an almost theatrical clearing of the throat. Startled, he looks up to see a figure standing at the mouth of the alley. It's a man, or at least he looks like a man, dressed in a sharp, old-fashioned suit with a colorful, swirling cape and a mustache that practically defies gravity. The stranger looks like he stepped out of a storybook. His eyes gleam with an unsettling warmth as he extends a gloved hand toward the kid. "Chin up, young man," the stranger says, his voice smooth and oddly comforting. "A little bird told me you're in need of a little assistance." The kid's heart races as he stares at the stranger, feeling a strange mixture of caution and curiosity. The man's appearance seems almost too perfect, like he's practiced this moment 100 times before. The kid's instincts scream at him to be wary. No one ever just appears like this. There's something mesmerizing about the man's calm smile and the way he twirls the end of his mustache with a practiced flick. Even when the stranger dips his hand into his jacket and pulls out a handful of brightly wrapped lollipops, each one gleaming in the dim light, the kid feels his worries fading, replaced by an odd sense of relief, like maybe, just maybe, this is exactly what he's been waiting for. "These," the stranger says with a wink, "are a little unconventional. A one-time solution for a particular sort of problem. All it takes is a single lick from that dreadful bully of yours, and you'll have all the revenge you could dream of. As simple as that," he says with a wink. "Just make sure he actually tastes it. And don't worry, its effects are completely unforgettable." He offers the kid a lollipop, his smile widening. All he needs to do is ensure that his bully licks the lollipop, and then he'll be able to have his revenge. It's really that simple. As though it's simple to convince his worst enemy to lick a lollipop. "Consider it a temporary adjustment," he adds with a conspiratorial grin. "A little taste of poetic justice. But remember, there's no going back once he's had a taste. So use it wisely." The kid hesitates for only a moment before reaching out and accepting a lollipop from the stranger. Dr. Wondertainment watches him, his smile widening. "Good choice," he murmurs. "I suspect this will be life-changing." The next day, the bully receives a letter slipped into his locker early in the morning. And wouldn't you know it, it's from the girl he's had a crush on all year. In the letter, she confesses her love and seals the deal with a gift. A lollipop. The bully's heart flutters, and with a smirk of disbelief, he unwraps the lollipop and tries it. His expression instantly turns to confusion, and he pauses, pulling the lollipop from his mouth. There's something odd about the taste, a strange, bitter tang, like he just licked the bottom of a shoe, but mixed with sugar. He winces, almost spitting it out, but then glances around and steels himself, deciding to play it cool. After all, it's a gift from her, and she could be watching. Maybe it's supposed to taste like this. He checks the wrapper on the candy. It says, Dr. Wondertainment's Tantalizing Tongue Twisters, trademark, asphalt flavor. What kind of joke candy is this? He takes another cautious lick, hoping the bitterness will fade, but instead, the taste grows stronger, leaving an unpleasant numbness on his tongue. Before he can figure out why the candy tastes so off, he notices the teacher approaching down the hall. Great, probably here to check up on him after yesterday's incident. No problem, he'll turn on his usual charm, play the model student, and then... But when he opens his mouth to speak, a sharp, jagged string of curse words explodes from his lips. Every head in the hallway turns, and a silence settles over the crowd. The bully's eyes widen in horror. Those weren't his words. In fact, he's not even sure he moved his mouth at all. The teacher's face goes pale, her lips thinning as she glares down at him. "What did you just say to me?" she asks, each word clipped and icy. The bully opens his mouth to apologize, but his voice betrays him again. He tries to clamp his lips shut, but they twist into an angry snarl as another outburst erupts from his mouth, this time even worse than before. He can't stop it. Each word feels like someone else is forcing it out, dragging his voice along with it. It's like watching himself in a nightmare. He's saying the most horrific words, the most brutal insults, all directed at the teacher in front of him. He's utterly mortified that he's somehow spewing all of these obscenities. To him, it doesn't even sound like his own voice, but rather someone imitating him. By the time he's done, he's standing there in harrowed silence in front of everyone. Before he can even try to offer more words to defend himself, the teacher's hand grips his wrist and drags him down the hall. His ruse has been destroyed. He'll probably be in detention until high school. Meanwhile, in a quiet corner of the school, the kid sits in the AV room, watching it all unfold on the security feed. His face curves into a grin as he listens to the bully's pitiful apologies and excuses, each one sweeter than he could have ever imagined. The taste of revenge is exhilarating, almost addicting. But as the kid laughs, unaware of the full implications, a shadow falls over his face on the screen, as though something else is watching and waiting. But while the kid revels in his victory, the true nature of Dr. Wondertainment's Tantalizing Tongue Twisters trademark remains as twisted and enigmatic as his creator. Revenge may be sweet, but as the SCP Foundation has discovered, these candies leave a bitter aftertaste for everyone who dares to use them. On the surface, these suckers appear to be nothing more than a strange confection, a harmless novelty. But as the SCP Foundation has come to learn, these Tantalizing Tongue Twisters trademark are anything but innocent. In fact, they're classified as SCP-3147, a product of Dr. Wondertainment, designed to sow discord in the most curious ways. And yes, I am, unfortunately, legally obliged to say the trademark part, due to the actions of Dr. Wondertainment's thaumaturgic lawyers. At face value, there's very little that seems actively anomalous about instances of SCP-3147. They're small lollipops made of a sphere of hard candy on the end of a white stick, covered in a wrapper that features Dr. Wondertainment branding, as well as the flavor of the item in question, which, as you've seen, and will further see, can skew a little bizarre. The same cannot be said of these candies on a molecular level. Foundation testing has yielded no progress in finding anything anomalous about the candy itself or the packaging containing it. If you enjoy one of these candies alone, you're unlikely to even notice anything strange about them. The anomalous effects of SCP-3147 only kick in once the candy has been licked by at least 2 people, which I personally find to be terribly unsanitary, even when you're dealing with non-anomalous candy. However, when a second person, or any others beyond that, lick an instance of SCP-3147 that was first licked by someone else, their oral cavity will come under the control of another member of the group. See what I mean about it being highly conceptual? While under the anomalous effect, not only will their mouth be at the mercy of another licker, but they will speak with the voice of the person controlling them. The amount of time the person remains affected is directly proportional to the amount of candy ingested by the subject, with the current minimums and maximums, with some variation, being 2 to 24 minutes. And because nothing involving Dr. Wondertainment is ever easy to deal with, these candies are rarely packaged alone. While they can be sold individually, the SCP Foundation has confiscated boxes with as many as 10 items per pack. These packs will often feature the following typically quirky Dr. Wondertainment ad copy. New from Dr. Wondertainment, the mouth-watering treat that will have you speaking in tongues. Need a party pick-me-up? Just gather 2 or 3 of your bestest friends, pick out your favorite flavor of Dr. Wondertainment's tantalizing tongue twisters trademark, and you're good to go. Let everyone get a tongue-teasing taste, then marvel as you give each other the gift of gab. Warning, maximum fun achieved with 4 friends. Dr. Wondertainment trademark and his candy crafting crew are not liable for any damages, physical, psychological, emotional, and or paranatural, caused by sharing Dr. Wondertainment's tantalizing tongue twisters trademark among 5 or more people. Play safe, kids! In context, that last comment feels almost sarcastic. After coming into possession of several packs of the anomalous contraband candy, Dr. James Smythe was put in charge of conducting experiments on members of D-Class personnel to explore the full potential effects of SCP-3147. It probably won't surprise you to hear that things went very quickly off the rails. In the first experiment, acting as a kind of control, D2172 alone was given an instance of SCP-3147 to sample. The flavor was sandy seashell. D2172 ingested everything that was given to him, except for the stick in the packaging, and experienced no anomalous effects, though he did report that the flavor was comparable to cream soda filtered through wet sand. Yummy. The next experiment was conducted on D2172 and D56980, using a candy with the flavor label Shoe Shine. The duo gained control of each other's mouths, which was an extremely strange experience for both of them. Smythe then gave them both a tongue twister to recite using the other one's mouth. This proved to be difficult, given the inherent difficulty of the tongue twister itself, plus the inherent disorientation of being in control of someone else's mouth rather than your own. It's a feeling I can't personally say I can relate to. Dr. Smythe noted, flavor said to be like leathery licorice. Despite the difficulties experienced using another person's mouth to speak, both subjects expressed that they enjoyed the experience and wished to continue taking part in future experiments with SCP-3147. With the next experiment, Dr. Smythe hoped to up the ante even further by having 4 different D-classes all lick the anomalous lollipop, which admittedly sounds a little uncomfortable when said aloud. These men were D2172, D11872, D42271, and D56980. The flavor of lollipop they were given was the extremely unappetizing pickled pepper. Incidentally, 4 subjects is also the maximum number recommended by the official packaging, so they were really pushing their limits on this one. Each time a different D-class licked the lollipop, they gained control of the mouth of the previous person who licked it, and thanks to being given permission to ingest all the candy on the stick, this effect remained for 15 minutes. In this time, they all conversed freely, enjoying the surreal nature of the experience. Dr. Smythe noted, flavor exactly as expected. On a personal note, I feel sorry for our poor transcriptionist. It was difficult enough for the Ds themselves to keep track of exactly who was talking. The goal of the next test was not to test how many people could be affected by the anomaly, but some of its potential applications. In this case, how it would interface with voice recognition technology. The subjects in this case were D2172 and D56980, and the flavor was the enigmatic chucked wood. After consuming the candy, they were given a voice-locked container, coded to open when it heard D56980 say, "Open Sesame." While D56980 stood on the other side of the room, D2172 approached the box. D56980 spoke through D2172's mouth, successfully unlocking the box on the second attempt. They continued testing this method with a variety of other voice recognition technologies, and the rate of success did not change as this variable shifted. Dr. Smythe noted, thankfully, the inability of the subject to directly use the voice that they have taken keeps SCP-3147 from being a substantial security threat. The next experiment was performed on another 4 members of D-Class personnel, D2172, D11872, D42271, and D56980. This time, the flavor selected was Fuzzy Wuzzy. Having tested a few different vectors of SCP-3147's effects, now Dr. Smythe felt it was time to discover the distance that the anomalous effects were operational over. That's why, after having them each consume an equal amount of the candy, Smythe had the 4 affected subjects stand at equidistant points around the perimeter of Site-272, and then were told to speak, conveying specific messages on the behalf of researchers supervising them. When the subjects got over the initial disorientation of not being able to hear their own voices as they spoke, things went swimmingly. Messages were cleanly conveyed between each member of affected D-Class personnel that did not degrade in quality despite the distance, and they were able to do this for approximately 21 minutes, exceeding even the most optimistic of the researchers' estimations. Dr. Smythe noted, further testing at longer distances is required. Plans are being drafted, and an appropriate test site will be located before submitting the proposed experiment to the site director for approval. If the Foundation can reverse engineer this effect, it could possibly be used as an emergency communication method. In a grim piece of tempting fate, things got out of hand during the 13th SCP-3147 experiment, when researchers pushed the boundaries just a little too far. They exceeded the recommended number of participants per candy and used 5 test subjects. The flavor was bitter butter, and the results were disastrous for all involved. During testing, the 5th member of the group, D42271, found her mouth being controlled by a little girl speaking from an unknown location, much to the confusion of the researchers and the other D-classes in the test group. The little girl cried for help through the D-class's mouth, and when she was questioned by Dr. Smythe about her location, she said, "I don't know. I was in a toy store with my mom, and I went to go look at the dolls. Then there was this big man that grabbed me when Mom wasn't looking, and he took me here. He said he needed to test stuff, and he keeps feeding me candy, and I don't like it anymore, and my tummy hurts, and..." Naturally, everyone in attendance was stressed by this, D42271 in particular. After a period of silence, the little girl's voice entered a state of audible panic, screaming out, "He's here! He's here! Tell him to go away! I can't eat anymore! Tell him to stop! Please make him stop!" D42271 valiantly tried to help, screaming through a body she didn't know for the assailant to leave the little girl alone, even as she felt as though a metal contraption was forcing open her jaw. But then, her body doubled over and began profusely vomiting, making everyone in attendance panic and call off the experiment early. Experiments were done on D42271's vomit in the aftermath, and it contained trace amounts of several other anomalous food items, which I've taken care to catalog here. SCP-1916, Zero-G-Wiz Moonrocks trademark. These are a series of multicolored jawbreakers, each one corresponding to a different planet mostly in our solar system, including Martian Cherry, Venusian Berry, Lunar Lime, Jovian Jelly, Outer Space Strawberry, and Planet X. Depending on the gravitational state of the corresponding celestial body, the gravity of anyone eating the candy is also affected, either massively increasing or decreasing their weight without any alteration to their mass or shape. SCP-1842, Dr. Wondertainment's Magic Microwave Set trademark. This is a toy microwave that can convert a toxic clay substance, known as SCP-1842-2, into any edible substance that it's molded into. The resulting foodstuffs are known as SCP-1842-3, which is harmless, but has no nutritional value whatsoever. It is what was found in the affected D-Class's vomit. And also SCP-1079, Dr. Wondertainment's Bubble Bath Bonbons trademark. These are another bizarre and disturbing confection which, once consumed, transforms a non-dangerous portion of the subject's blood into bubble bath liquids, which they then secrete from their skin, causing their body to be instantaneously cleaned, and likely leaving their clothes an uncomfortable, wet mess. All of this led to an extremely unsettling discovery. It seems that Dr. Wondertainment poses a danger to children beyond just their anomalous toys and confections. The 13th test indicated that the group of interest are kidnapping children to use as living guinea pigs for their various products against their will. A realization only intensified when Foundation collaboration with conventional law enforcement revealed that the little girl D42271 had channeled, corresponded exactly with a young girl who had gone missing in Broken Cliff, Missouri. D42271 requested to be submitted for further testing on SCP-3147, perhaps hoping that she could reconnect with the poor little girl and be a part of helping her escape the diabolical Dr. Wondertainment's clutches. This request, however, was denied out of security concerns. The Foundation has done what they can to keep a lid on this latest example of Dr. Wondertainment's whimsical mayhem. Containment procedures dictate that no more than 144 instances of SCP-3147 are to be contained in Safe Storage Locker 87A at Site-272 at any given time, and any others are to be noted and incinerated immediately. The same goes for any advertising material discovered in the field. Physical instances are to be incinerated, and online instances are to be deleted. If a person is found to be in possession of an instance of SCP-3147, the anomalous item is to be confiscated immediately, and they are to be treated with Class A amnestics if they have witnessed any of SCP-3147's anomalous effects. The Foundation has also distributed materials related to a fake recall effort, claiming that exposure to SCP-3147 has a deliriant effect on victims. As you've already seen, researchers have had their fun performing experiments with this confectionery anomaly, but that doesn't mean these experiments aren't tightly regulated. Experiment proposals must be submitted to Research Lead Dr. James Smythe for approval. Any experiments involving 5 or more test subjects must also be approved by the site director and overseen personally by Dr. Smythe, just to make sure nobody uses research privileges irresponsibly. A wise owl was once asked, "How many licks does it take to get to the center of a Tootsie Pop?" When it comes to Dr. Wondertainment's tantalizing tongue twisters trademark, this wise old researcher recommends you play it safe and stick to chocolate. Check out the Dr. Bob Patreon and become a junior researcher today. Now go and watch another entry from the files of Dr. Bob, like SCP-1550, Dr. Wondertainment's Custom Pets, Top 12 SCP Animals compilation.